Federal workers to write emails every week detailing their work. Oh, the humanity. As Hamas stalls again on returning Israeli hostages and another terror attack takes place in Haifa, Israel halts all aid going into Gaza, and the U.S. is backing Israel all the way. And no, this isn't a video of a Jeep Grand Cherokee having a blowout. It's the U.S. taking out a top terrorist leader in Syria. And no, AAA will not be able to help. American Sunrise Early Edition starts now.
Welcome to American Sunrise Early Edition. The show where faith, freedom, and the values that built this nation take center stage.
Your good deeds and bad deeds. That's how we're going to judge you.
Join host Jake Novak as he breaks down the stories that matter.
We will be letting the public know regularly what we have found.
American Sunrise Early Edition with your host, Jake Novak, starts now.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to American Sunrise Early Edition. And I hope you're noticing I'm showing the audience and all of you respect. Suit and tie. Thank you very much for joining us. Also joining us right now is Mary Walter. She's the host of the Mary Walter Show podcast. She's also a radio host. You've seen her and heard her all over the media. And Mary, it was a historic moment at the White House Friday. Obviously, there's been a couple of days. We've had 72 hours now to digest it all. You've been covering stuff like this for a long time, but neither one of us have ever covered something quite like this before. I'd love to get your overall impressions now that you've also had a couple more days to think about it.
Jake, I know you, you know me. Was that not amazing to watch? I was just my mouth is hanging open. I'm like, it's too early for beer, but wow, I would pop one open right now to watch this, right? That was insane what happened. What I think is important that people need to realize, and I had the chance to do, is go back and watch the whole video. Because there were things that Zelensky said before that, just the meat of it that you're showing on media, right? Like just that, oh, look, Trump advanced and attacked Zelensky. That's not true. Zelensky said a couple of things. He did say, you will have soldiers. And I think that really kind of got under Trump's skin. He also attacked Putin and called him a killer. And Donald Trump just because you come across as being anti-Zelensky doesn't mean that you're pro-Putin. I tell people, think of it this way. If you and your spouse are getting divorced and you're going to a mediator because you don't want to go to lawyers, so you're going to a mediator, you don't want that mediator to be on one side or the other. Doesn't matter who started the problem, doesn't matter who cheated, whatever you did, you want the mediator to be an unbiased person in the middle. You want them to be the referee. And that's what Trump is trying to do here. And I think Zelensky going after Putin annoyed Trump. I think there were a couple of things that finally led to the whole blow up. And again, just because you come across as anti-Zelensky or don't want to take his side doesn't mean that you're taking Putin's side. And the people with TDS can't get past that. They just can't see it that way.
No, and also, I'm sorry, I've been through so many years of phony news conferences, dog and pony kind of stuff, and as long as they aren't like throwing down and punching each other and really shouting and cursing at each other, I don't mind the reality in front of my TV camera. I just don't, again, with some limits. All right, Mary, some crazy guy named Jake Novak on X over the weekend posted this, noting that the EU countries pay Putin 22 billion euros per year for fuel, and they're only contributing $19 billion to defend Ukraine. So let's do the math. I think that puts Putin up ahead by about 3 billion euros. I mean, this is just incredible. And remember, it was the Joe Biden administration that made sure that the United States couldn't step in and replace Putin and provide the fuel to the EU. I'm so tired of the sanctimony, Mary. These people are wagging their fingers at President Trump, but they're actually doing something more to fund Putin's war against Ukraine. It's incredible.
It is, but I think a lot of this goes to the fact that there is so much hatred of Donald Trump by both the establishment and then the sycophants and the rank and file who just can't see past their hatred for Trump. If Trump is for making peace, they're going to be for war. And they're never going to acknowledge their hypocrisy because they need to maintain the hypocrisy. They need to maintain the status quo in order to humiliate Trump. So now it's about, Zelensky was invited by King Charles to Sandringham, and now France and Canada and the UK are going to get together and they're going to negotiate a peace deal, because they're going to humiliate Trump. I'm like, go for it. We're just not going to give you any more money. How's that going to work out for you? It's a losing battle on their side, but they're so emotionally consumed with Trump that this is just not going to work out well for them.
And also, I mean, we've been talking about this for years now. President Trump trying to get the European countries to spend more money on defense. And I think he did. He tricked them into it, maybe, perhaps. They're so much in support of Ukraine. He kicks him out of the way. He kicks Zelensky out of the White House, and suddenly they're ponying up this money like never before. I mean, maybe that was the plan all along. Now, by contrast, you may remember every time Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu comes to the White House, even when it was President Obama, even when it was Joe Biden, he was incredibly respectful and thankful to the United States and deferential to the president. But for many months now, this ludicrous situation has been going on in Israel, where Israel has to provide aid to Gaza, and they're forced to hand it over when they know it's going straight into the hands of Hamas, used to literally fatten and also strengthen the terrorists. But now that Hamas is delaying the handing over of the remaining hostages, Israel is halting that aid, at least for now. And it looks like the Trump team is backing Israel all the way. But Mary, listen, we're both in the news media. How can Israel push back on, the inevitable story that's going to come out today and tomorrow about how Israel is starving the so-called Gazan civilians when it's actually just cutting off Hamas and the terrorists?
I'm so glad we're talking about this back to back with the Israel story, because on the left, they'll say, well, how can they'll say Ukraine was attacked by Russia. Well, Israel was attacked by Hamas, but they don't want to see that. Right. They don't want to acknowledge that. There are rules, and to the hypocrisy of the story about Ukraine and Putin that we were just talking about. It's the same thing with Israel and Hamas, but in reverse. Right. They're doing it in reverse. I said, you guys scream about, Ukraine. They shouldn't have to give up territory. I'm like, well, you're all for Israel giving up territory. You think that they should, and you're totally fine with that, right? You worry about, the poor Palestinians, the poor Palestinians. Like, well, no, they're not all Hamas members, obviously. But in the Second World War, not all Germans were Nazis. We bombed the hell out of them anyway, very indiscriminately, because we had a war to fight to make it end. So their quote unquote logic only goes so far. And I'm glad that President Trump is backing Israel. They have been, attacked and victims for their entire existence. There has been a country or a group of people that don't want to wipe them off the face of the planet. And the way Netanyahu was treated by Biden, by Obama, was shameful. But that was totally okay. And it's totally okay that Zelensky comes to the White House not wearing a suit. And I don't know if you saw it, but when he got out of the car with Trump said something to him was like, oh, you don't have a suit, or something like that along those lines. I think he was insulted. I think Trump was insulted by Zelensky's whole costume. It's like a costume that he wears. So
that's right.
The hypocrisy is so strong on both sides, and I'm so glad we're doing those stories back to back.
Yeah, I remember one of the meetings that Netanyahu had with Obama when President Obama was president, and they deciphered every little facial movement he made, but Netanyahu made. There was one point where he was sort of clenching his teeth a little bit, or it looked like that, when Obama was speaking some very, very harsh and really untrue words about Israel. And the news media went through every little movement of his face. Meanwhile, Zelensky says all this challenging and nasty stuff, and we're supposed to take it. Again, listen, politics is hypocrisy, but in the news media, we're supposed to call it out, and they didn't do that. Hey, finally, Mary, it looks like Elon Musk and the Doge team are now going to, hold your breath, hold on to your pearls. They're going to now ask those federal workers to send them an email every week. A one-page email saying what they did for the week. Oh, my God, it could be a permanent deal. There's going to be a hue and cry about this. You know that. But this is something many private sector workers have had to do for years. I had to do it in some of my jobs. Are the American people going to fall for this propaganda that are going to try to make this into some kind of violation of the Geneva Convention?
It's so funny because the Democrats have been put in a position of having to defend the indefensible on so many fronts. And this is just one more. And this also makes, I think, a lot of people question something they didn't know. Why are our federal workers unionized? What is that about? Why do they need a union to work against us? We basically, taxpayers pay their salaries, which funds their union. which works then against us in negotiations. It's kind of crazy. They should not be unionized. And because they're unionized, because they're government workers, this just exposes everything that Elon Musk and so many people have been saying about our federal government. It's fat and bloated, just like most Americans are, and it's time to put them on the treadmill. I've worked on projects where we had to hit certain goalposts, and you had to have papers written up about, the things you accomplished. Did you meet this marker? Did you meet this marker? This marker? And we had to do that. That was just that was part of the job. And they're very upset, but I don't think the average American really feels for them when it comes to this, or kind of looking at them going, okay, then quit. Go get a job in the private sector.
Yeah, and I don't think it's just on the Democrats. It's one of the reasons why it's important to have someone like Elon Musk helming this, because honestly, I don't think government workers, Republicans or Democrats, establishment types understand what private sector work is like, which is really frightening because they're the ones who regulate it. It's absolutely crazy. Mary Walter, thank you so much for joining us. Have a great week. Thank you so much for getting up early for us. Next time we do it, there'll be a little bit more sunshine, I promise.
Can we have a little coffee the next time we do this?
Yeah,
I mean, I don't
time.
ask for much.
Right.
That's all. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. Coming up, Joe Biden has been out of office for a month now. But his horrible legacy on border issues is going to haunt America for some time. And we just got another reminder of that with tragic circumstances. And can you have mail-in ballots and election integrity? One expert will weigh in on that when American Sunrise Early Edition comes right back. There's a live shot of the Battery in New York City. Look at that. We're starting to see some sunshine. It's cold, but we have sunshine much more clear than usual right now. We're getting back towards a little bit of a longer day with sunlight. Thank you so much. Hey, welcome back to American Sunrise Early Edition. I'm Jake Novak. Thank you so much again for joining us. Folks watching us on Getter and Rumble, and the Getter chat going really strong right now. A lot of comments about Doge, a lot of comments about Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, so keep it going. All right, there are a lot of egregious examples of the Biden administration's deliberate effort to flood this country with illegal aliens, other types of people, other non-citizens, who went on to commit further crimes here in America. But this may be the worst one yet. A Haitian migrant has been charged with a triple murder in Fayetteville, North Carolina. He allegedly killed several members of his own family last week, even after he came to the U.S. as part of Joe Biden's controversial migrant flights program. The Fayetteville Police Department says 26-year-old Mackenzie Darbuz killed 77-year-old Beatrice Desir, as well as a 13-year-old and a 14-year-old. Now, some of you may have heard Joe Biden said this, by the way, last year, and a lot of Democrats and other people arguing that, well, we have much higher rate of crime among native-born American citizens. First of all, I don't know if anyone's ever challenged him on that. I'd like to see the math on that. But second of all, so what? It doesn't matter. Why would we want to import even one net new killer into the United States? We're not vetting people. We're letting people just come in based on who lines up first. It's insane. Doesn't matter whether they have a higher rate of crime or not. One net new crime is one net new crime too many. I don't understand why this is a counter argument. It certainly shouldn't be one. All right, here's an interesting stat, care of veteran pollster and my friend Scott Rasmussen. Check this out. This is interesting. 67% of Americans support bringing in the National Guard to ensure Jewish students' safety on college campuses. And this is even more interesting. 75% of Republicans agree to this, and 64% of Democrats. That's a huge majority. Now, Scott goes on to say that this isn't a partisan issue. He's right. When institutions fail to uphold basic security, the people demand action. And here's what I say. These colleges that are allowing these egregious civil rights violations and riots in the form of protests, they continue to allow this. They're going to get sued by Pam Bondi's Department of Justice. And if they do get sued, based on that poll, they better not take their chances in a jury trial. The poll doesn't lie. They better settle, or better yet, they better get rid of these rioters on campus, period. All right, here's a question. Can you still have election integrity and mail-in voting at the same time? Former U.S. Marine Matt Meck explains what needs to change for that to happen to our Frank Gaffney. Check it out.
If these mail-in ballots are going to continue to be a feature of our elections, should they be, and can you have voter ID of some kind with that?
Well, they shouldn't be, and the executive orders address the mail-in ballots. Very limited, very specific, and you have to affirmatively ask for them, right? And you have to have a documented specific reason. You're going to be on documented travel, you're in the military, you're out of the country.
Not just send them to everybody.
Correct, yeah.
And then some.
In this state, you have to opt out of being mailed out to everybody. California just comes out to everybody. And the voter ID is in there, right? And you heard President Trump say that to the governors, 2 days ago? Voter ID, paper ballots, one-day voting. We add hand count, and importantly, count where cast. When you count these things, when you cast, you count them where they were cast, because, Frank, it's sad. Having been in the military, the chain of custody for your analysis is more robust than the chain of custody for our ballots, and that is just unacceptable.
Securing America with Frank Gaffney airs Monday through Friday here on Real America's Voice at 5 a.m. Eastern Time. You have to wake up early in the morning if you want to secure America, and believe me, it's worth it. For all of you who were in the military, you know what I'm talking about. You know about that early reveille. All right, coming up, when you're hot, you're hot. Our Moving America segment is on the way with news on just about the hottest car and SUV brand in America right now. It may surprise you. And the old bank error in your favor, collect $200 thing has just gone through some major inflation. I mean, this is possibly the biggest screw up of all time in banking. I'll have the details for you when American Sunrise Early Edition comes right back. Good morning. Look at all these clear days we're having. I feel like spring is really coming close. I know that it's still cold. It was really freezing for a lot of us this weekend. But the daylight is starting to peak out. This is Chicago, an hour behind me on the East Coast, and it's pretty light for this hour in the day. So spring is coming, folks. All right, welcome back to American Sunrise Early Edition. Let's take a look at where the markets will begin today. Looks like we're going to have some positive numbers. We had a massive rally in the stock market on Friday. The markets seem to I don't know exactly the correlation yet. I think a lot of people have some theories. But the markets seem to like that exchange in the White House between President Trump and President Zelensky because they started to shoot up after that. I'm not really sure why. I don't think it was a coincidence, however. And let's take a look at Bitcoin for a second here because there was news on the Bitcoin front. Now, it's down $1,400 right now since the beginning of the day, but we're up at $92,000, $900 level. We were all the way down to the $80,000 level. If you remember at the end of last week, President Trump announcing there's going to be some kind of a Bitcoin reserve like we do with the petroleum reserve. Oh, it just popped up to 93. Well, I'm not trying to talk it up, but it's happening. So Bitcoin is definitely getting bolstered, a little bit of a bottom under it right now. And again, I still think it will again go over 100,000 pretty soon. Maybe not today, maybe not this week, but it's getting there. All right. You know, there are a number of financial news stories I could tell you about this morning, but this is the only one you're going to remember anyway. So let's just get to it and leave it at this when it comes to your money. You are not reading this wrong. Citigroup mistakenly credited a customer's account with $81 trillion last year when it meant to send just $280. Now, we're just finding out about this now. I don't know. How can you go almost an entire year without reporting this to the public? I don't know. But it happened last April, and it took several hours to fix the mistake. I don't think there's even $81 trillion in the whole world. I mean, I know there's inflation, but come on. Citigroup, if you're listening, all I need is just 1 hour. You don't have to take several hours to fix a mistake. I just need 1 hour with $81 trillion, and I'll be happy, okay? And we can all just, but in all seriousness, $81 trillion. So let's go. Citigroup, however, again, in all seriousness, has had a history of making these kinds of mistakes. And it was even fined $136 million by regulators last year for not making enough progress to fix them. I don't know, an $81 trillion mistake and they're still not making enough progress? There's not enough incentive in the world for these people. I don't get it. All right, let's talk about something even more valuable than $81 trillion. America's school children. No, I am not being facetious. It's true. Come on, you can't put a dollar price on our school children. Joining me now to talk about them is the founder of the Schoolhouse and the American Emergent Curriculum, Mimosa Jones-Tunney. Mimosa joins me frequently on this program to talk about this crucial issue. And let's start with just something that's a little bit topical because we can't ignore the elephant in the room. The fate of Education Secretary-designate Linda McMahon. Looks like she's cleared a key hurdle. I think she's going to be confirmed this week. And she's going to get in there now. Now, Mimosa, you have an interesting point that you've made to me in the past that while we all can see a lot of positives in trying to maybe just completely tear down the Department of Education and maybe start again or do something else, you have an idea about maybe while she's there, maybe she should just do some radical new policies that will be just as radical as dismantling the Department of Education. But while she's there and has these offices in place, maybe she should do that. So I wonder if you want to expand on that just a little.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the NAEP statistics that came out about a month ago that everyone was up in arms quoting, we've been quoting them for 10 years. I'm glad people are finally on this bandwagon. Those are not federal statistics. Those are state statistics. So what's happening in this country with our children at an average of a 32% proficiency in all subjects, that's me taking all subjects and finding an average, is this is happening in communities, in towns, and in states. So regardless of where we move the money, you are still going to have a fundamental pedagogical problem in this country. We spend more money than any other country per pupil. You would not in business continue to pour money into something that continues to have poor results. And so the federal government has a huge opportunity here. And I really hope that Secretary McMahon, should she be confirmed this week, takes this opportunity not just to pare down the Department of Education. I am 100% for that and to move programs to the state level. But there's so much more that a federal agency with this kind of power can do. You know, you take a school like the Schoolhouse that has been tremendously successful here in New York, take a handful of others throughout this country that really have seen huge changes in our children doing what we're doing, and bring us together to talk about policy, to talk about research, to talk about how we school American children. There is a way to do it, and there is a way to do it right. And because we have an administration of disruption right now and sort of turning the apple cart over and saying, let's do something new, I think we'd be missing a huge opportunity if we didn't save a piece of the Department of Education, 10, 15, 20% of the Department of Education to do just that.
You know, Melissa, you said to me in the past, it's not about, and you said it in that answer, it's not about the money that we're spending. We know that the money is, it doesn't really, that's not the issue because we're spending more than anyone else. But it's basically a teaching and an education problem. You know, one of the things I always wanted to ask you is, do we have a problem in this country with the way that we not only train teachers, because, you know, we both agree that they're not learning, they're not being taught how to actually teach kids in the best way, but finding them in the first place. Is it too hard to become a teacher if you're 40, 50 years old, you want to do your last 10, 15 years of your working life teaching, and you've had a successful career in finance, you've had a successful career maybe even in the arts or anywhere, and good luck trying to get certified as a teacher in a public school system? And wouldn't these people and their experience be wonderful for that kind of an opportunity?
Well, I think if you're talking about a 40 to 50-year-old who has had this great career, the way that you put it, I don't know that they're going to want to go into the public school system. And that's the intrinsic problem. So there's two problems there. One is we haven't created a culture in our schools where people want to be employed there. You know, my husband is a great restaurateur. He has over 1,000 employees. People want to come to work there. And any person who is in business knows that you have to create a fundamentally good culture with your people in order to bring the best people in and in order to retain them. Secondly, to your point, you know, as we talk about, and you and I have said this before, we don't have a money problem in education. We have a teaching problem. And if you're going to go and get certified today, one of the things that shocked me when I started this journey 14 years ago is that many of the, if not all, of the teaching colleges in the United States don't teach fundamental pedagogical science. So we would get teachers very early on who had never read Pestalozzi, Piaget, Gardner, Montessori, all of the people throughout the last 150 years who tell us what children need in their development stages. On the other side, we also got teachers who had never had a course in classroom management, who didn't know how to interact professionally with their administrators or within the classroom or even with parents. So I don't know exactly what's happening in our teachers' colleges. We have a great one here on Long Island called Malloy College that actually puts out fantastic educators. But we do have a systemic problem in the teaching of teachers who then go into classrooms completely unprepared as to what the child needs to learn best in this country.
Melissa, I wish we had more time, but that's why we keep bringing you back on the program to talk as much as we possibly can. Thank you so much for joining us. And again, now you've made me hungry by talking about your husband's restaurants. Thanks a lot. I got to have breakfast before the show. Mental note, but thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Jake.
Yeah. All right. Let's go ahead and check out this video.
It's 106 miles to Chicago. We got a full tank of gas, half a pack of cigarettes. It's dark, and we're wearing sunglasses. Hit it.
All right. I can't see Jake and Elwood Blues get behind the wheel of a Kia or a Hyundai, but so many other Americans are. Hyundai set a new record for overall February car sales with 62,032 units sold. That's a 3% increase over the same period last year. Kia also had its best ever February with 63,300 units sold, a healthy 7.2% year-over-year growth. This is 5 months in a row right now of record new sales compared to the same months a year before. Now remember, this is an amazing comeback story. Maybe you guys remember about a year or so ago, Kia and Hyundai were under tremendous pressure because it was easier to hack into their systems and steal those cars, get those doors unlocked. This was a huge problem across the country. Kia and Hyundai brands were facing a serious, serious threat in the United States. Their sales really crashed, and people were really trashing the brand. They've turned things around at Kia and Hyundai. This is possible. Now, you'll remember that remarkable Hyundai and Kia comeback when you hear about people making excuses for other car companies and their CEOs, including now former Chrysler Jeep Dodge parent Stellantis CEO Carlos Tavares. His pay package fell 37% last year to $24 million. Oh, his pay package fell to $24 million? Fell? I'm sorry, but he made how much money for a brand that's losing billions of dollars last year alone? Folks, there's just not enough incentive at some of these top car companies to do a better job if when your company is losing more than almost $2 billion, actually, and you still make a $24 million salary. How much would he have made if the company made money? $81 trillion? I don't really know. This is not going to turn things around. They're looking for a new CEO right now. They better find someone and have incentives for that person to do well, not a disincentive to do well. All right. This isn't about cars, but it still belongs in the Moving America segment. In case you're a regular schmo like me, you may not be aware that these first-class suites on major jetliners are super tricked out these days. They have showers. They have full beds. They have an alternative reality where the New York Jets win. Okay, well, not that, but they're so tricked out that they're now causing a problem. These little suites you're looking at are so luxurious that the parts and the time to build them takes too long, and Boeing and Airbus now are getting delays. They're delaying their deliveries of their jetliners to the countries and the airlines that buy them because it takes too long to build these luxury suites. Boy, the rich really have it really good. They're making us all wait for them to live like this. All right, and now a crime against humanity. If you're a lover of the Ford F-150, like I know so many millions of you are, you may want to hold your breath here, but check out this video. This is a Ford F-150, a brand new one, being crushed. This is a real video. This is not staged. It's not a prop. Why are they doing this? Well, the answer is when car companies and truck companies make a prototype, an actual workable prototype with everything working, sometimes they have to destroy them when the actual line comes out because they don't completely meet all the street legal regulations. So they basically destroy them. This is very sad, though. You could drive this car and be completely safe, this truck, but here you go. Very, very sad, but again, rest in peace, Ford F-150 Raptor. You served a great, great cause. All right, coming up. Did someone put Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky up to his petulant performance in the White House? And by someone, do we mean one or all of these folks, including Susan Rice, who you see right there? And this latest attack on decency at Barnard College could be a turning point in the fight against campus anti-Semitism and schools getting away with doing nothing about it. Could be a turning point. American Sunrise Early Edition is coming right back. It's Monday, March 3rd. Here are some of today's top stories. Maybe Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky had some help. New reports suggest former Obama and Biden administration officials riled Zelensky up and encouraged him to be defiant to President Trump. The great email controversy continues. Now it looks like Elon Musk and Doge will be requiring federal workers to write emails every week detailing their work. Oh, the humanity. As Hamas stalls again on returning Israeli hostages and another terror attack takes place in Haifa, Israel halts all aid going into Gaza, and the U.S. is backing Israel all the way. And are colleges doing enough to stop disgusting anti-Semitic campus outbursts like this? Happened in New York City last week, by the way. School administrators may soon find out the hard way that they are ultimately responsible for this nonsense. American Sunrise Early Edition continues now. Welcome back to American Sunrise Early Edition. I'm Jake Novak. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for joining the chat and Getter, watching us on Getter and Rumble as well. Joining me now is Republican New York State Assemblyman Jake Blumenkrantz. And Jake, you're a major critic of how state lawmakers have sat on the sidelines while incidents like this one that happened at Barnard College in New York last week continue to happen. And I think you have some ideas on how to change this problem, don't you?
Absolutely, Jake. Thank you. Good morning. And thanks for having me on. We are seeing something terrible on college campuses. We're seeing 70% of students feeling unsafe at the schools they attend, especially here in New York, with multiple schools with failing grades when it comes to protecting students against anti-Semitism. Columbia has an F. NYU has an F. Cornell has an F. Here in New York, we're at top of the list. We're in the Hall of Shame when it comes to not protecting our Jewish students, which is crazy to think about if you just look back a few years. What we need to do is actually stand up to what we're seeing on campuses. And when you're seeing protests turn into intimidation of Jewish students, the state needs to do more. The federal government certainly seems to be stepping in where the state is lagging, but we really need to see leadership in this space. What's happening is we're seeing a lot of words coming from the governor, from the mayor, but we're not seeing actions. We're seeing actions in Florida, in Texas. These governors are not letting these students take over campuses, take over classes. But here in New York, it seems to be happening more and more. It's so disgusting, and we need to stop it.
You know, you made a good point there. You said campuses, but also classes. This is where they've crossed the line. There may be a lot of people out there who say, I can't stand these protests that are really riots in the masquerading as protests. But they're on campus or in the middle of the student, the student greens or the quad. And I guess you could say that's a public place. But when in these last videos that we've been showing you, they're disrupting the classes, and that's when you get into civil rights world. Now, Assemblyman, I want to show you a poll I mentioned on this program a little bit earlier. Check this out. It's an interesting stat, care of my friend and pollster Scott Rasmussen. 67%, it's a huge majority, of all Americans support bringing in the National Guard to ensure Jewish student safety on college campuses. And that's 75% of Republicans and 64% of Democrats. So, I mean, a pretty major agreement. We don't have too many polls where there's that kind of agreement. And Scott goes on to say that this isn't a partisan issue. That's my point. When institutions fail to provide basic security and the carrying out of classes, they're going to want action. Here's what I say, Assemblyman. If these colleges continue to not do their job on this, the Department of Justice with Pam Bondi is going to sue them. And when you look at that poll, they better not take their chances in a jury trial, should they?
No, absolutely not. And I'll tell you, I stood up at Columbia at the peak of the protest with the students. I got on the ground, and I was not joined by Kathy Hochul. I was not joined by Mayor Adams. I was there with a select few other Jewish legislators and advocates who were sitting there calling for the exact same thing. Where is the National Guard? Why aren't we doing what we can as a state to make sure that Jewish students are safe on campus? Why is it that when once students dreamed of going to Columbia, now they're fearing if they even want to wear their Star of David to campus? When do we start blaming victims, the Jewish students, trying to get to class saying they feel victimized, and we're telling them, people have a right to victimize you? I'm sorry, it's a backwards world we're living in here in New York, and we need leadership who will finally stand up and say something, and then actually do something about it.
Yeah, let's talk about another backwards thing that's going on in New York. I've been trying to explain to everyone how the congestion pricing battle between the Trump administration and New York Governor Kathy Hochul is actually indeed a national story, because in this battle, You have one side standing up for the working poor and the other side pretending to be standing up for the environment and train and bus commuters, but really that's a sham. And I understand you're suing the New York Metropolitan Transit Authority, yes?
I am, Jake. I think that we need to be working on behalf of our residents, working on behalf of the people of Long Island and New York, because at the end of the day, this is a scheme that's unfair, unconstitutional, and violative of federal law. The Supremacy Clause is crystal clear. Secretary Duffy took bold action when he stood up against the dictatorship of Kathy Hochul here in New York, where she says, I don't care what the federal government has to say on this. She did when she had political motives to stop congestion pricing. It wasn't necessary when she had an election to run. But all of a sudden, when it's Trump versus her, she has all the wherewithal in the world to fight against the federal government. I'm sorry. The federal government put their foot down here. They told us that this needs to end now, and she's still charging residents. What we need to do is get full oversight over the MTA. We need to see a full forensic audit of the MTA, know where the dollars and cents are going before we continue to tax and spend on Long Islanders and on the backs of those who continue to not see the results of the tax money they're putting in.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you where the money's going, Assemblyman. It's going to the unfunded pensions for retired MTA workers. I showed some video just a few minutes ago of first-class cabins now, these amazing suites on airlines. You know, for the amount of money they took in for the first month or so of congestion pricing, I want to see on my next subway car a first-class cabin like that, but I'm not going to get it. This is the big part of the sham. Now, there's another war on the poor that's going on right now, and that is something that's supposed to happen. I'm glad they're delaying it. But that war on gas, natural gas, which, by the way, is incredibly clean. Natural gas is twice as clean as coal. In other words, it has half the emissions as coal. It's also much cleaner than petroleum. There are people who, by the way, have to change their heating in their house from oil to natural gas just to help their asthma and other respiratory problems. But Kathy Hochul and the Democrats in New York and in other states, not just New York, have been saying, well, we need to cut off natural gas because that's a fossil fuel. Now, that's being delayed right now because it's getting really, really cold, and we've already had a hike in our heating prices. To me, this is another example of how it's basically admission, isn't it, Assemblyman, that when they delay this stuff, they're admitting that they know this hurts the poor, and they'll just wait for it gets warmer again. I mean, we've got to stop this, I think. Again, just for the poor, this isn't partisan. This is about whether or not you're going to try to get brownie points with the environmentalists by hurting the poor.
And this isn't just the poor, this is everyone. I think we went through a conscientious effort to say, okay, oil-based home heating, maybe not the best idea. Let's move to nat gas, transitional energy, all the above approach. A lot of homes have converted. A lot of people have really been conscientious to make that conversion because it is more efficient, less about necessarily just the environment and about the economics, which is what most families really care about. And what Kathy Hochul has done is said, oh, you just converted? Sorry, now you're going to have to convert again. You're going to have to stop building your house the way you want to. You can't have your gas stoves. For what? I'd like to see the numbers of how and what the carbon footprint will look like before and after. It's de minimis compared to China, which is building coal plant after coal plant on a daily basis. We're not fighting the great fight here for the rest of the world. And now me and my family have to pay double or triple if I just lived in another state. It's unfair, and it is just arbitrary the way they decide who gets to have something and who doesn't when it comes to this green revolution that continues to hurt families all across New York. And I'm glad to see that she's starting to see some reality here. She's seeing it in many different versions of her electric plans. Electric buses. They created this plan before electric buses were an efficient use of funds. They're still not there, and she still wants to move us to that mandate. It's going to cost the taxpayer thousands of dollars a year in their pocketbook if they have to pay for this going forward, and she's got to stop that as well.
You know, Assemblyman, I only have about a minute left, and I'm sorry to try to ask, because I know you're not a mind reader. Nobody really is, but we've talked about a couple of policies right here, and I can't help but ask you, who is Kathy Hochul working for? I mean, you would think that if she just did the opposite of those last two policies, her poll numbers would shoot higher. Is she working for someone else other than the people of New York? Because it would be so easy for her to pursue the opposite of those policies and be a lot more popular. Is there anyone telling her don't do what the National Party wants to do what the New Yorkers want?
What is the National Party doing? The party's in shambles right now, but what she's doing is she's in a race to the left with no finish line in order to maintain power in the state of New York. She's got to deal with the Democratic Socialists. She's got to deal with the people on the far left in the city who all want a piece of the pie here in New York. who loses in this race is the people of Long Island, the people of New York, who just want to live. They just want to not be taxed to death. They just want to find a way to live with their families here in New York and enjoy their lives. And unfortunately, what's happening is political games, and everyone loses.
Yeah, all right, Governor Hochul, blink twice if you're being held hostage by the National Party, which doesn't care about New York. We'll see what we can to save you. Assemblyman Jake Blumenkrantz, thank you so much for joining us. Have a great week.
Thanks for having me, Jake.
All right, coming up, don't call it a State of the Union. President Trump is about to give a joint address, an address to the joint session of Congress. Don't call it State of the Union. It's not officially called that. All right, we got that out of the way. David Brody's going to join us to talk about that and how last year, remember, when we were walking on eggshells, worried that Joe Biden might stumble and fall, literally and figuratively? We'll talk about that with David Brody just in a second. Good morning. Welcome back to American Sunrise Early Edition. That is a live shot of Philadelphia. Every town we've looked at today is sunny. And I was thinking, are we going to do It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia thing? And here we go. A sunny opening morning for us. Cold, but sunny, and I'll take it. Hey, David Brody is joining us right now. And David, tomorrow night, President Trump is going to be giving an address to a joint session of Congress. Don't call it State of the Union. After the inaugural, you don't call it a State of the Union. Okay, we got that out of the way. That's going to be 90% of the reporting on this story, so I got that out of the way. Here's what's interesting, David. For years, I was such an opponent of this first quasi-State of the Union type thing after inaugural, only a month later. I mean, what's the point? The new president's only been in office for a short time. All they're going to do is kind of repeat the same thing they said at the inaugural. But in this case, David, you really have had about a year's worth, if not more, of activity from this new Trump administration. And I do think it is not a bad time for him to speak to the whole country and to Congress about all the things that have been done and been accomplished in the last 31, 32 days.
You're right. And you say a year or so. You said a year or more. I'll go with the more on that because, I don't think there's any question about the fact that, what we have seen has just been remarkable from the Trump administration. There's so many differences, right? I mean, first of all, I remember the conversation last time around as it relates to Biden's last State of the Union address, which is, could he even get through it? And, the bar was so low. And it was just like, you know what? He actually made it through it. And then I think the big talk, at least in MAGA circles, was like, well, what kind of shots was he getting beforehand to actually make it through? And remember the Marjorie Taylor Greene thing from last time, Biden's State of the Union, when Marjorie Taylor Greene yelled out about immigration, said, say her name as it relates to Lincoln Riley. And of course, Biden said, yes, Lincoln Riley. So look, I mean, that's where we're at, or where we were at. Now we're in a much different place. Great to see. By the way, President Trump, I was looking at the stats on this. President Trump's first joint session of Congress, because you're right, it wasn't a State of the Union, back in 2017, 47 million people watched that. 32 million watched Biden. It isn't exactly apples to apples because the 32 million I'm referring to is Biden's last State of the Union address. But the point is that Trump is definitely must-see TV. So I'm looking forward to seeing what we're going to see tonight. I guess the only sad part about all of this is that I really love to see the Nancy Pelosi eye rolls and I mean, just her facial expressions was just kind of comical. We're not going to get to see that. We're not going to get to see Hakeem Jeffries. We are going to see, obviously, J.D. Vance and Speaker Johnson. So that's a little womp-womp for me.
Yeah, I think one of the things that the American people need to understand is that, again, we have these things in our Constitution, or we have these things in our traditions, so that we make sure that the presidents don't become too inaccessible. You have again, love him or hate him, we have the most accessible president in the history of this country. He not only has frequent meetings on camera with the news media, but he really tells you what he's thinking all the time. And for years, we've both been in newsrooms, and you've heard the conversations. Oh, I may like or dislike this president, but everything is so staged. Everything is so with makeup and cameras and lighting, and it's just so staged. And that's not what they really say or think behind the scenes. No one ever says that about Donald Trump. And I think tonight you're going to get that as well. He's not going to speak in a different way or say different words than he usually does.
Well, he uses authenticity, and we should remember, as much as we say that all the time, what's important to understand here from a PR perspective is that Donald Trump knows the PR game as well. And he plays the PR authenticity game very, very well. And I say game, it's not a game to him. I mean, it is who he is. But he knows that there is value in the public relations of being authentic. And to be able to go over the liberal media and just talk to the American people. Let's be honest. I mean, he kept that Zelensky thing open the other day for what it was, 40, 50 minutes or so. He did that on purpose. I mean, he could have easily ushered people out after 2 or 3 minutes. He didn't want to, because he wanted to. He knew that his brand is authenticity, and it's great. And by the way, this will be interesting. I just want to say that him coming back to Capitol Hill post January 6th, this will be the first time he kind of strolls into the Capitol like that. Oh, that'll be interesting.
All right. Well, anyway, notice that David Brody is wearing a suit. I'm sure I'll talk about that in a minute. I'm Jake Novak. Thanks for joining me. American Sunrise coming right up.
American Sunrise is a great way to start your morning. Join us Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We've got the news of the day and some compelling interviews that you don't want to miss. Here's what you missed from yesterday. Attorney General Pam Bondi, of course, she's expected today, guys, to release those Jeffrey Epstein flight logs. It's a story that I think the entire country is going to be watching. A lot of folks in Washington, D.C. probably very nervous right now.
A lot of flight logs, a lot of names, a lot of information, but it's pretty sick what that man did.
Okay, well,
along with his co-defendant.
The lives that this crime ring impacted are really almost immeasurable, because it happened over such a long period of time, David. And the suspects, goodness knows, because some of them were probably never on his plane. Some of them probably just came to his mansion here in Florida, David.
I'm a little concerned that, not that it's going to be a nothing burger, don't get me wrong, but I'm a little concerned that we're hyping this up as like, okay, we're going to get all of these juicy names. I'm just wondering what we're going to see exactly. I don't know. I'm skeptical about it.
In my opinion, and many people that I talk to about this subject, it will be a major disappointment. Now, that's in no effort to discredit what she's doing or what she's planning on doing, but I just know the expectations of the American people and everyday people like us right now. I mean, that's what we want. I don't think we're going to get that, though.
And one of the things that we need to address in this country, because it's a big problem, whether it comes at our southern border or comes by way of elitist billionaires and multimillionaires, is the trafficking of children for sex. All right, we have to stop this.
Well, tens of thousands of Israelis, many holding flags, orange balloons, and signs saying "Forgive us," packed hostages square in Tel Aviv, Israel, for the Bibas family funeral procession. This all happening yesterday. We're looking at the video here. This, as the bodies of Shiri Bibas and her 2 young sons were taken for burial.
Well, we might have political disagreements and that can be very passionate, but when it comes to fighting for our survival and hugging each other in times of grief, we are together. And we're also a nation of believers.
4-year-old and a 9-month-old, 2 little babies who Hamas murdered with their bare hands. Hamas literally beat these 2 little babies to death. Then they parade their remains in a procession, in a celebration, in a parade in Gaza. David, it's beyond evil and demonic. And I think this singular event has galvanized the people of Israel more than anything since, frankly, the October 7th massacre. This was a watershed moment in a bad way for Hamas because, again, and it's made them more resolute, even more determined to crush Hamas.
Ahead on American Sunrise, an Oval Office showdown between President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky that very well may go down in history. Coming up, extensive coverage of the discussion and the fallout both here in the United States and around the world. Plus, international leaders huddle up to bring President Donald Trump a plan to end the war between Russia and Ukraine. Will it be in line with what the U.S. Commander-in-Chief wants in the deal? We'll explain. And the path to peace for Gaza may rest in the hands of President Trump, but the possibility of peace in the region is on a shakier ground this morning after the latest terror attack on Israel leaves at least 1 dead and 4 wounded. We'll have the very latest. Plus, former National Security Advisor to President Trump, General Michael Flynn, joins us for a one-on-one interview with Dr. Gina. All of that and so much more right now on American Sunrise.
Good morning, America.
Welcome to American Sunrise.
Whether it's culture,
we have breaking news to share with you.
Politics.
President Trump is joining us live now from Florida.
We've got you covered.
This is what it looks like to be a patriot.
We have to protect the American family.
The American dream is still alive.
I'm David Brody.
I'm Terrance.
And I'm Dr. Gina. Good morning, everybody. I am Dr. Gina. We are live with you from the Palm Beaches. Let's bring in David Brody. He's in Washington, D.C., and Terrance Bates in our Denver newsroom. Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's a Monday, but it's one of those Mondays that feels like it's a good Monday. I don't know. David Brody, how you doing?
Yeah.
It hasn't made it here
I'm
yet.
doing great. It is a good Monday.
It hasn't
Why
made it
not?
to my
I don't
end
say
yet,
good
Dr.
Monday.
Gina.
What
What's
happened,
that?
T?
I'm just saying it hasn't made it my way yet. I'm still waking up. It's still got a bit of fog. The lights are in my eyes. I'll get there. Give me about 10 more minutes. I'll get there. I promise. But yeah, it is Monday and we're here together. That's the big news, and that's what's important.
Yes, and lots of news over the weekend. Holy cow. I don't know about you guys, but when that news, I'll tell you what I was doing. I'm going to be real candid here. I was sitting in a nail parking lot. I was sitting ready to go into a nail appointment. I could not stop watching what was going on with President Trump and Zelensky. And I sat there and then I missed my whole nail appointment. Still don't have my nails done because I couldn't stop watching on Friday. And I couldn't believe we weren't on TV because I so wanted to talk about it. But guess what, guys? We can talk about it now.
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Terrance.
So Dr. Gina, I was here. I was on TV, covering it all. And it's very rare that I'm speechless. I think you guys know that. I typically have something to say about everything. They came back to me kind of after that wrapped up, and all I could muster was a wow. That's all I could muster was wow. I have never in my life seen something like that, particularly in the Oval Office, particularly between two diplomats and presidents. Never seen anything like that. It was awesome, both figuratively and literally speaking. I've never seen anything like that, David. And here's the thing. It really set, if you will, I think it set a tone worldwide for dealing with Ukraine, because now even Europe is scrambling to kind of come up with some sort of peace plan and to try to patch things up and make sure that Europe is on board as well. I think the fallout of this has really been interesting over the past several days, David.
Yeah, the scrambling right now is on. There's no doubt about it. I've never seen anything like it, obviously. I mean, that goes without saying. That was just unbelievable. I will say this, that, look, the problem, Zelensky had a lot of problems going to that meeting. First of all, he had a chip on his shoulder. The body language was all off. He was ungrateful. We know all of that. That's low-hanging fruit. To me, what's interesting is what you have to do in that situation, and he refused to do it. So this is on Zelensky. Is that when J.D. Vance or others might have just suggested a few things there, or even whatever ended up happening, Zelensky needed to simply say this: well, I'm looking forward to a spirited conversation as the day moves forward.
Exactly.
That's it.
Yep.
That's all. That's called decorum, especially here on American soil, especially after you've been given hundreds of billions of dollars. Sorry, that's the line. He blew it, and he blew it for his country, too, because at this point, look, all bets are off. And I feel horrible for the Ukrainians suffering through all of this, because they didn't deserve what Zelensky pulled in the Oval Office the other day.
This was the worst lack of leadership. And if we can just start at the very beginning, the fundamentals do matter. You don't show up to our White House dressed like you're going back on to dance on stage, because that's where you really started. He looked like all he needed was the high heels, and he was back on the stage dancing again. I can't respect that. It seemed disrespectful. It seemed disrespectful the first time when he did it, but it seems really disrespectful after everything we've done. You can't throw on a jacket, just a jacket. Was that too much to ask? To me, it started there and it went on from that. I tell my children this all the time: if you're going to dress like a fool, you're going to act like a fool. So just don't do it.
Yeah. Dr. Gina, before we get to the Bible verse, I think it's also appropriate this morning to lift up President Trump in prayer. He's going, and this announcement just came out that he's going to have just an annual check, nothing necessarily huge, but it's his annual check that will happen next month. So let's just lift him in prayer a little bit today to make sure that everything does, in fact, check out well once he goes for his exam next month. But I think that's a great segue also, Dr. Gina, to our Bible verse.
Well, there's a lot to pray about on the international level, for all of our leadership, and for this audience who is just amazing, and of course always for David Brody's beautiful daughter Elena. Let's check out today's Bible verse. It is from Ephesians 4:1-6, and it reads, "I therefore, the prisoner of the Lord, beseech you to walk worthy of the calling with which you were called, with all lowliness and gentleness, with long suffering, bearing with one another in love, endeavoring to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. There is one body and one Spirit, just as you were called in one hope of your calling, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is above all and through all and in you all. What a perfect Bible read for today. I'd like to bring in an expert on the White House meetings, former National Security Advisor General Michael Flynn. The general is the author of a new book coming out in late June, and it's called Pardon of Innocence, A Travesty of Justice Denied. Welcome, General. Give us your reaction to, if you would, General, to what you witnessed in the Oval Office on Friday. With my own eyes, I've never seen such disrespect. I want your take. And good morning.
Yeah, so first of all, good morning, Dr. Gina. Gina, you're wonderful. And it is a good morning because it's because we're all alive, right?
That's right.
And I think that the Bible verse that you stated there really describes American leadership, which is really strong and has always remained humble from the very beginning, where George Washington, as our first president, he actually stated that. And I think that it's really wise that we remind every single one of your audience who we are. I think that we are, as you know, strategically, the situation in Europe, and that means globally, is a very, very tense, dangerous situation. This meeting, and people will have their own various opinions about it. But there was a series of meetings before two presidents sit down. There are a series of meetings that occur, and I think Secretary Rubio pointed some of that out this weekend. And I think people, I'll point people to some of his statements because they were very important to understand the preceding meetings that were held, in addition to meetings that were held with members of Congress. So a lot of these types of meetings are set up so the two leaders meet, and there's already an agreement in place. What I believe, and I do fundamentally believe this now because we're hearing more and more about this, more of it's breaking this morning, that there was some individuals from former administrations, U.S. administrations, that spoke with or worked with Zelensky prior to him going into this meeting with Trump to try to create this tension and to almost set up Donald Trump. And I think that Trump is too smart, and he's also a gifted, not only a gifted businessman, but a gifted politician at this stage, being in his second term. But I really want to take this sort of one level above, Gina, and for your audience here this morning. The Europeans are having an identity crisis right now. I just posted a statement on X that Viktor Orban from Hungary talked about, because in the European Union, a group of unelected officials there, which is really run by this globalist community of really strong progressive liberal leaders across Europe. The danger is that globalism is rising along with, as I said, other isms, and one of those isms is Islamism. And it's just a fact of life. It is a truth that we are beginning to see. And in fact, it was attempted certainly by the Obama administration, and then even pushed even more during the Biden administration, to have that type of thing rise in our own country. So what Europe is experiencing or starting to see is this, as relationships go and as tides go, the relationship that the United States of America and that Europe has relied on since World War II that tide is starting to go out. And that relationship is not about strong, friendly relationships between people that like each other, like a Thatcher and a Reagan did. This is really about money. I mean, the funding by the United States of America post World War II, we rebuilt Europe. Hell, we rebuilt China, but we rebuilt Europe, and then since that time, we've been paying for NATO. I mean, almost 100%. I mean, very, very few countries. Germany got away with almost 50 years of not paying nearly a dime in support. So that money train, that gravy train, Europe is starting to realize that with a guy like Donald Trump, that's not going to be there forever. And in fact, he is going to start using that now to negotiate a new future of relationships, because sovereignty matters. Taking care of our own country first matters. And that's kind of where Donald Trump is at, because if we don't take care of our own home first, and that you can dig those kinds of ideas and principles out of the Bible itself. You have to take care of your own home first, and then you can start to consider taking care of others. And that's where Donald Trump is at. This meeting, yes, it was historic in its actions, but I think the bigger issue is that the entirety of Europe, and frankly, China and Russia, now see the type of leader that they're going to be dealing with. And frankly, the uncertainty that Donald Trump projects sometimes is a very strong leadership trait. There is a time when uncertainty matters in negotiations. And all you got to do is read Donald Trump's book. And many of these people have dealt with him already, so they think that they know what they're facing, but they really don't, because Trump is in a much stronger position because the people of America gave him a big time mandate election back in November. And I'm excited about what I see. And I'll finish with this. We're about to enter our 250th year of as a nation state. And in order for us to have another 250 years for our children and our grandchildren, we're going to have to be very strong. And that kind of strength that Donald Trump is demonstrating right now to the world is exactly what the United States of America needs to survive another 250 years.
But you don't believe, General, that our enemies have at all scattered into the corners. You believe that they were active in this thing with Zelensky. You believe this was absolutely staged, or at least set up, or at least precipitated by their involvement. I'd like you to name names, and I'd also like you to talk about something else I've seen you talking about, and that is these assassination attempts. You believe that the same people who threatened you in your life are the same people that were behind the assassination attempts on Donald Trump, our president's life. Please tell us names.
Yeah, well, so the one name is Victoria Nuland. Victoria Nuland has so much at stake here. And then I would recommend there's a group of people that are outside of the government, and so that's just, so she's one. And there's been a couple of others that have been floating around in the internet for sure. But Victoria Nuland is one who's had a lot, and she's got a lot at stake here, because like I said, I don't know, last 24 hours, or I've been saying for a long time, Ukraine is one big money laundering operation. And all Elon has done is demonstrated the outflow of dollars going out of the country through different parts of our government. What he hasn't shown yet is the complete cycle of funding that is going on from once it goes out. Where does it go to? How does it then flow around Europe? And how does it flow back into the pockets of people here in the United States of America? That has not been demonstrated yet. I am aware of some of that. And I think that's what Elon and President Trump are going to discover. And people like Victoria Nuland is one of those people that is going to, she's going to feel the pain here, I believe, because these people have been at the center of this. The other thing that people need to understand is that this guy, Zelensky, is an actor. He is an actor. He actually has a great relationship with Putin. There's been a lot of talk about, and all his tough talk. We're going to discover things. We're going to discover things on this in these coming weeks about Zelensky that, maybe it may take a couple of months. I hope it doesn't, because I think that we're capable of being much faster, moving much faster. But we're going to discover things that the American people are going to be so upset about when it comes to the money flow back into the United States of America, back into the coffers of people, frankly, right there in Washington, D.C., where I think David is at. And it's going to be ugly. It's going to be ugly. And it's not just Democrats. It's going to be the entirety of the establishment, the security state.
Wow.
These are the things that when you talk about spending $500 billion over $400 to $500 billion in one country just over the last few years, that money's going somewhere, and it ain't going into the troops at the on the front lines of the various provinces that are fighting against the Russians there. And so I can tell you that I guarantee that the soldiers there will tell you that they're out of ammunition, they're out of weapons, they're out of food, and they're out of people. And that's because the money that's been flowing is just not getting there.
What role, General, does Jim Comey play in what is going on behind the scenes, and also Barack Obama?
Yeah, Barack Obama was leading Joe Biden by the nose these last 4 years. Comey is one of their spokespersons that's out there to make sure that they keep beating this drum of, Russia, Russia, Russia. They keep beating this drum of Trump, orange man bad. I mean, let's face it, Jim Comey, not only is his arrogance going to be his downfall and along with his ego, but Jim Comey has done so many things that have demonstrated what a good cop is not supposed to be, right? I mean, the top cop in the country, right? The director of the FBI, former director of the FBI. Talk about a disgraced individual. And this is a guy, they call him the Cardinal for a reason. I mean, jokingly, because of his ego. And one of the things that does matter, and I'll go biblical on you here because I think you guys are really a part of that. And I'm not a Bible expert at all, but, I think it talks about it in the Bible where, and I'll go back to the word humility. There's a guy that doesn't have any humility at all. He demonstrates none of that. And so guys like Comey, guys like Obama, which match these profiles of people that want to move this country in a completely different direction, and they want to consume power, not so much more wealth. I mean, wealth is a subset of power. These are people who want power, who want to stay in power, and who want to change, as Barack Obama said, fundamentally, America.
But General, you tweeted on X or posted on X that of Jim Comey's involvement in not only trying to kill you, I believe is what you said, but also his involvement with the attempted assassinations on our president. Can you go deeper on that? Can you tell us more about that, about what you know and how you know it?
Sure. I mean, those weren't the exact words, but I mean, where we're at is we are at a place where there have been two attempts that have been public, right? Two attempts that we all know about, the one in Pennsylvania and then the one down in Florida, assassination attempts against the president of the United States. And more will come out about those. You can tell. I mean, there's not a lot to talk about these, right? I mean, but how they were set up, what's happening, more information is going to come out about those and how they were set up, who was involved. I would just say that, and those are what is public. One of the things that we do have to pray for is the safety and security of President Donald J. Trump going forward. I mean, he's a very, very historic figure. We have a system in place that takes over, but boy, I'll tell you, because of where we are globally, and there is a globalist institution made up of people, Comey really is just a soldier. Barack Obama is a soldier, but he's a higher up in the ranks. Guys like John Brennan is a soldier. He's probably a little bit higher up in the ranks, and they give him a little bit more authority to do the things that need to be done because of where he sits on the outside of a giant security system. But these are soldiers. The real threats are the people that are sort of running this sort of globalist group. And this is not a conspiracy. These are people that are well known. I mean, start with the World Economic Forum and work your way down. Start with George Soros. George, the banking. I just throw out one thing: the banking system in Ukraine is run by Soros. I mean, it's run by Soros, and there's no doubt about that. There's filings in court cases right now that prove that out. So we are in an interesting period of time. President Trump has got to stand strong. He's got to maintain his his own humility too, and I think that's important. And he does that in his own way. And I think that for the American people need to stay very switched on and very adaptive to what might come, because every single day is a new day. Like you guys started out with, this is a great Monday. We're alive. We're moving forward. But I do think that executive orders matter, but now it's the execution of those executive orders by not only the people in the bureaucracy, which they're holding up right now. I mean, these people are fighting Trump tooth and nail. They're undermining his authority. So the American people need to come to the fore and stand our ground and say, look, enough is enough. So I
General,
appreciate you guys having me on.
Well, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for everything you do. I know you're fighting every single day with one of the most humble spirits I've ever known. God bless you. God bless you, your work, and thank you for being with us.
God bless.
All right, you guys, the Middle East is on edge. Israel stops humanitarian aid and there's goods going into Gaza are cut off as the terrorist group Hamas allows the ceasefire deal to expire. So what will happen now? Can President Trump's administration help bring peace to the Middle East? That and more as American Sunrise continues.
Chicago, Illinois, here on a Monday morning in March. The Ides of March. I'll have to look that up. I don't know. I got a lot to look up. Welcome back, everybody, to American Sunrise. I'm David Brody. Israel has halted humanitarian aid to Gaza, demanding that Hamas accept a new U.S. proposed ceasefire extension through the Ramadan and Passover holidays. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the U.S. proposal calls for Hamas to release half of the remaining hostages on the first day, then every other hostages when a final ceasefire deal is reached. Hamas has apparently 59 hostages still, 35 of them presumed dead. Then we're also following this morning a deadly terror attack in Haifa today. According to police, a stabbing left a 70-year-old person dead along with 4 others that were injured. They have confirmed that the attacker, shockingly, is a terrorist. I say that facetiously. Police say the attacker, who was an Arab citizen of Israel, who returned to Israel recently after being abroad for several months, was killed by a security guard and a civilian. All right, let's bring in Ruthie Bloom, a former advisor to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and senior contributing editor for the Jewish News Syndicate.org. Ruthie, always good to see you. Thanks for being a voice of moral clarity at a key juncture in American, U.S., and international history. So what do you think here in terms of the ceasefire? And we're hearing so much about what's going to transpire in the future. How do I say this? What's your best guess as to where this is going? And good luck if you can actually determine what that solution is.
You know, it's interesting you're asking me that because there's a difference between what my best guess is and what my hope is. And I'm trying to I'm trying to mesh those two things. Okay, so my best guess is that Hamas is not going to comply and that Israel is going to have to resume the war. And thank God for the Trump administration for releasing all kinds of weapons that we need and military aid, especially since the Biden administration withheld it. That's on one side. Now, the trouble is that, we talk about victory and we talk about peace before we've even completed this war. And that's the trouble in asymmetric warfare, because we're a democratic country backed by the greatest superpower in the world, and we're fighting these horrific terrorists, but they have hostages. So there you go. Because of the hostages and because we care about every human life, we're in this impasse. Now, we stopped humanitarian aid. Now, I hate that word because I'd prefer to call it aid to Hamas, since every truck that went into Gaza, hundreds and hundreds daily, Hamas stole the supplies, not only food, there's cigarettes and candy and cookies and all kinds of things, stole it to sell it at exorbitant prices to Gazans. And meanwhile, the captors of these hostages have been starving them purposely. So it's not as though that aid even gets to the hostages. That's one thing. Second of all, this is a little bit too late because they've already amassed about 6 months worth of supplies. So unless we cut off their electricity and their water and say, you want a glass of water, you want your cell phone charged, each time we even turn on turn on the lights, you return hostages. I mean, we're in this terrible situation where Hamas is holding the cards, and that's inexcusable.
You make an interesting point. Hamas is holding the cards. On paper, we're at phase 2 of this ceasefire deal, but I say that on paper because it just doesn't feel like there's actually a continued ceasefire, and it's flimsy at best right now. Meantime, as you mentioned, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu facing criticism even from within the region, from stopping food and other supplies there, from entering Gaza. It seems to me that right now, Hamas owns the narrative, or at least has control of the narrative in terms of how the world is looking at what's going on, which obviously doesn't help the cause of the Israeli people.
Oh, no, absolutely. But it's interesting. When you say the world, first of all, that's true of the anti-Semitic world. It's true of the anti-Israel world. It's true of, campus protesters. But from all the surveys we've read, that's not true of the American people. The American people do not see Hamas as the good guys in this conflict. It's not true of all people. It's true of parts of the world, the woke world, the UN agencies. That's true. But you know what? Finally, Netanyahu really doesn't have to take what they say into account. And why I say finally is because up until 2 months ago, we also had a hostile administration in Washington. And that is no longer the case.
Ruthie, do you believe the world is taking President Trump's plan for a Gaza takeover seriously? The president spoke about this plan when Netanyahu visited the White House. Trump says Palestinians should not go through a process of rebuilding and that they should resettle permanently in nice homes someplace else. What do you think?
Well, the question is it a realistic plan? It's hard to say. But what I can say is he did a really brilliant thing by legitimizing the suggestion that repeating the same mistakes again and again and again every year, every time there's a conflict, and billions go into Gaza to rebuild it, and it all goes to the terrorists. What he said is, okay, no, we're changing the whole paradigm, okay? We're emptying out that place. And of course, since the Palestinians claim it's an open-air prison, Trump is saying, good, let's help you get out of prison. Let's resettle you where you can have a good life. And in the meantime, we will do something that is also financially beneficial. We'll build a Riviera out of it and make it an international hub. Will that happen? I don't know. But up until now, everything has failed. And what's really great about it is that he has this common sense. On the other hand, he's Trump. So he shoots from the hip, or sounds like he's shooting from the hip. And then everyone goes into panic mode, which was also good, because that caused all the Arab leaders to say, well, wait a minute. Wait, we'll come up with a plan. We'll come up with a better plan, because no Arab leader wants Palestinians in his own borders.
Yeah. Ruthie Bloom, thank you for being here. Great to see you as always. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Ruthie.
And thank you, as always, for having me.
You bet. All right, coming up, a new study shows a startling amount of kids trust the health advice from TikTok trends over health professionals. We're going to talk about that in a moment. Also, on the big show, the Trump administration sends more U.S. troops to the southern border to deter illegals from coming into our country. Those details when American Sunrise returns.
Welcome back to American Sunrise. I'm Dr. Gina. Thank you for joining us today. Look at that pretty city of Dallas, Texas. It is time now for today's health news, sponsored by the wellness company Under the Microscope today, debunking new health trends seen on TikTok. I'll tell you what, there's a lot of propaganda. My kids were telling me about this weekend on TikTok. According to new research, 9 out of every 10 youngsters are turning to social media. Youngsters? Did I really just say? I'm turning into David Brody. For their health tips rather than asking doctors or health experts for answers. Even more worrying, more than a quarter of adults now turning to AI for suggestions about health issues. Yes, the same AI that Elon is warning could be giving you information from a woke perspective. Got to be careful here. One of the first things that our kids are reading about on TikTok are seeing on TikTok is parasite cleanses for weight loss. Now, social media markets this as a detox and that it says that it sheds extra weight. However, the reality is most developed countries don't have as many parasites as TikTok might insinuate. Doctors say if weight management is the goal, parasite cleanses might not be the answer. And trusting social media posts as a one-fits-all approach is definitely not the answer. Doctors say seek out a healthcare professional for how to lose actual fat rather than to think that you can fix it all with some sort of cleanse. Here's another one, though. Lettuce water for improved sleep. Okay, I haven't even heard this one, you guys, and I read all this stuff. Now, according to studies, there is no clinical evidence supporting this popular social media trend. Nutritionists say the concentration of lactocarium, this is a mild sedative-like compound, is too low to act as a natural sleep aid, and they recommend a consistent sleep schedule, one that does not include screen time on TikTok before you go to bed, right? Make sure your magnesium levels are in good shape, too. That's another great one to do. Get that panel that tells you where all of your levels are, and then you can see if you're missing a little vitamin D, need a little more sunshine, right? Those kinds of things can help. It is a new day in America and a new administration in Washington, D.C. There's a lot of excitement and optimism, but the reality is a lot of work to do, too, when it comes to fixing our broken healthcare system. Forces responsible for breaking it aren't going to go away, and the challenges our system faces won't fix themselves overnight. So you want to be prepared. That's where the Wellness Company comes in. Their doctors are medical professionals. You can trust them, and their line of prescription medical kits are the gold standard when it comes to keeping you safe and healthy. There's the emergency medical kit, the contagion kit, the first aid kit, the travel kit. These prescription kits contain an assortment of life-saving medications and guidebooks to assist in the proper use of them. From flu to strep to COVID to bird flu, a trip to the beach, a trip overseas, the Wellness Company has a prescription kit designed to keep you and your family safe. Make America healthy again. You guys, it starts at home. Do your part and protect the health of you and your family. Go to twc.health/RAV, twc.health/RAV. Use the promo code RAV. That will save you 10%. David, Brody, I said youngsters.
Yes.
I did.
Sorry.
This is a moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm rubbing off on you, and I apologize for that. Sorry. My bad. All right. Well, we better move on and not even think about it at this point. All right. Some other news now. This news on the border. The Trump administration sending 3,000 more troops along with armored Stryker vehicles to the southern border. So this now brings the current troop number to more than 9,000 troops. This move, by the way, was ordered by the new Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth. He posted this message on his X account, quote, "We are dead serious about 100% operational control of the southern border." Yeah, I think we've gotten that message. I think Americans, know this. Joining us now to discuss President Donald Trump's promises made, promises kept about the border is Republican Texas State Representative Nat Schatzline. Nate, great to have you here on the show. I appreciate it. So, or we appreciate it. The Trump effect, it's real. Last week, we reported that illegal migrant encounters at the southern border have hit some of their lowest levels in years. So talk to us about Texas specifically. How have these measures impacted you there in District 93? Good morning to you.
Well, good morning, David. It's always an honor to be on here on Real America's Voice with you. Here in Texas, look, we want to lead the way. But the reality is for years, we haven't done that. And now we have an administration who is stepping in and is actually doing what they said they were going to do. So far in February, about 359 illegal migrants per day have been caught across the entire southern border. That's down more than 90% from February of 2024, putting the U.S. back on track to have the lowest monthly border crossings in at least 25 years. Well, how have we done that? Well, it is exactly what you said. Promises made, promises kept. Just some of the executive orders President Trump has done, declaring a national emergency at the southern border. That allows us to use armed forces, just what you're talking about here, create additional barriers. It also, he signed an executive order protecting the United States from foreign terrorists and other national security and public safety threats through enhanced vetting. I mean, just getting our vetting processes. It was last session where I fought for an amendment for us to take biometric data of terrorists crossing our southern Texas border. The fact that I had to fight for that is crazy, but we got it done. Now President Trump saying he's going to limit birthright citizenship so that we can get our issues in order with this crisis at the border. He's advocating for America First trade policies, realigning the United States refugee admissions program, the USRAP. I mean, this is incredible. We're finally seeing someone take this seriously. And so it's on us now in Texas that we have to partner with good legislation to help people like Secretary Pete Hegseth and Tom Homan and President Trump and J.D. Vance. And we've got to come alongside them and pass laws that, make sure that our county law enforcement, I have a bill that makes sure that county law enforcement now has federal immigration authority to where they partner with ICE so that we can conduct the largest deportation of illegal alien criminals that we've ever seen in the United States. We also have to make sure that we can pass a law to DNA test kids as they come across the border so that we can rescue them from the cartels and human trafficking. So It's on us now in the state of Texas. We have a federal administration that is doing everything we can. Texas has to lead the way, and we've got to step up to the plate.
You know, I have to ask you this. We don't have a lot of time yet left, so I've got to ask you. Your Lieutenant Governor, Dan Patrick, wants to change the name of the New York Strip to the Texas Strip because he says he was inspired by President Trump changing the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. And he says, look, New York is not producing the beef to call it the New York Strip anymore. Most of the beef you eat comes from Texas. Got to get your comment on this, Congressman.
Yeah, I was with the Lieutenant Governor at the dinner where he announced this, and I have to say, I am for making everything Texas-based. So Texas Strip, bring it on, everything we can. Look, I think Texas is truly leading the way, and you talk about an absolute conservative hero. Our Lieutenant Governor, Dan Patrick, is an absolute hero. He is pushing for some high-quality conservative legislation this session. I can't wait to get his back so we can actually secure our Texas border.
Well, they can change the
Go ahead,
yeah,
David.
I just want to say they can change the chicken. They can also change the steak, but they can also change the chicken because it's now going to Texas. Texas fried chicken instead of Kentucky fried chicken. They're moving to Texas too. Okay, there, I'm done.
We have to make Texas healthy again. So no hormones, no nothing in it, and we can call it the Texas Strip.
Love that.
Taha. I love it.
All right, Congressman Nate Schatzline, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, guys.
Coming up, a possible existential threat to humanity. What is woke mind virus, and why is Elon Musk giving an early warning about it? Also later, what it was like to be in the Oval Office when the historic showdown between President Trump and Zelensky happened. We'll take you there, and we'll be right back. Fun starts again in 2 minutes. All right, you guys, it is now time to stay awake and not woke. This is brought to us by the 1775 Coffee Company. Every morning, you have a choice. Start your day with coffee that stands for American values, or keep giving your money away to woke corporations that despise everything you believe in. 1775 coffee, roasted right here in Florida, red state, and it is fresh, bold, and tested to be mold-free, so you're not drinking stale corporate sludge. And believe me when I say, it's a dang good coffee. They're making coffee great again because, let's face it, the corporate coffee giants sold out a long time ago. Their coffee is stale, bitter, and mass-produced in factories that couldn't care less about quality. In 1775, though, it's different. It is small batch roasted, taste tested by people who actually love this country, nice, and shipped directly to your door. You like K-Cups instead? Well, they have those too. Bold, smooth, and ready to brew. Want a brain boost? Well, grab their Vitality Mushroom Blend. It's packed with lion's mane and cordyceps for a clean, focused boost without all the additives. And if you want the real deal, dark roast, hits harder than a Trump rally in the Rust Belt. It does. Go to 1775coffee.com/RAV and use code RAV for 10% off. Fuel up with freedom and start your morning right. Now that we are caffeinated, it is time to stay awake, not woke. Tea!
From coffee to tea. I like that, Dr. Gina. Good morning. Hey, look, so imagine AI being programmed to be woke of all things. Billionaire Elon Musk recently warned that the woke mind virus, that's a quote from him, integrated into AI systems represents an existential threat to humanity. He even describes it as increasingly harmful, saying that it is challenging to eliminate due to the pervasive nature of woke content online. Here's his thoughts.
To summarize maybe the woke mind virus, it consists of creating very, very divisive identity politics. So it actually amplifies racism, amplifies, frankly, sexism, and all the isms. And while claiming to do the opposite, it actually divides people and makes them sort of hate each other, and it makes people hate themselves. And it's also anti-meritocratic. It's not merit-based.
And Musk even gives examples. For instance, he says when other AIs were asked whether global thermonuclear war or misgendering was worse, they picked misgendering. The existential problem with that extrapolation is that a super powerful AI could decide that the only 100% certain way to stop misgendering is to kill all humans. Let's bring in Dr. Gina to talk a bit more about this because it is rather frightening and potentially a scary and dangerous scenario. David joining us as well. So what is your guys' take on all of this? I'm not going to lie, it's a little too deep for me to comprehend and a little too kind of esoteric for me to even kind of wrap my brain around, but you guys are much smarter than me. So Dr. Gina, your thoughts on all of this?
Well, this is the same thing we've been seeing for ages with the woke mindset. They have been teaching us how horrible Americans are, while we are by far, level on level, the most humanitarian and charitable country in the entire world ever. And yet, if you really take wokeness to its end, the moral of the story is America should not exist because we had slavery, because we treat people wrongly, because we've been involved in wars that were unjust, because there were Indians in America that were conquered when we came here originally. So that makes all of our founding fathers, and oh, by the way, they owned slaves, so they were horrible people, and everything they did was illegitimate. I mean, this is the end of that story. Is so. America's a terrible place, kill all the Americans. So it shouldn't surprise you, David and Terrance, that the end scenario of AI is to kill all humans. That this is what Marxism goes to every time, David.
Yeah, and we've seen this on Google with the algorithms. You know, you type in something and all this, crap comes up because, they have it. It's a whole game. It's an algorithm game. So this is like a whole different level. And honestly, I'm trying to understand the level. I can't figure it all out. But I will say this, is that, we talk about AI, and let's be honest, AI is created by humans. I mean, in other words, the software is created by humans. And if the software is
yesterday. They had a balloon ceremony releasing orange balloons in honor of the Bebas children. And I think certainly among lawmakers, among officials in Washington, D.C., this is a little bit of a nail in a coffin. No pun intended there, of course. But it's just tragic to see that, these children that for so long, Americans, Israelis, people across the world had really held out hope. Maybe they're alive. Maybe they've survived. Maybe they made it. And this really all goes back to, of course, the evil that we have seen at the hands of Hamas. If these children were allowed to grow, to live in peace, if they'd never been taken, of course, they would be living beautiful, healthy lives. And instead, you have a nation turning out to mourn and to grieve. And I think those kids have just become an image for really the entire world of the cost of terrorism. This is it. You have innocent children, babies slaughtered. This is the cost of terrorism. And I think it highlights as well the need for a real change in leadership, specifically in Gaza. This isn't going to work to have Hamas take over again. And, Trump has been criticized for saying there should be a hotel on the beach of Gaza or whatever. But what his comments highlight is that what has happened in Gaza repeatedly, where Hamas comes in, terrorists take over, they lead, that's no longer going to work. Because if something doesn't change, if there's not a real dramatic change in Gaza, fast forward 5, 10, 15 years, we will find ourselves right back here. And who will be the next victims? Who will be the next Bebas children? It's only a matter of time if there is not real change in Gaza.
Well, and there are a number of accounts saying that when President Trump learned of those murders, he was very, very enraged and had a few choice words to say. Virginia Allen, hopefully we'll talk about better topics next time. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'm going to give you an early happy weekend to you.
Thank you so much, Jake. I appreciate it.
All right, David Brody is going to join us in a moment, and we will be discussing a true American treasure we lost last night, Gene Hackman. I want you to stick around because you're going to about to see what I believe was his greatest acting moment in a very illustrious career. Stay with us.
You push it. You try to slide it. You even try to hold them shut. But your doors just won't stay closed no matter what. Introducing Ruby Monkey Magnets. Brand new ultra-thin magnetic plates that will keep your doors and drawers shut. And now may be your last chance to get them at a low price. Just peel to reveal the super strong adhesive. Place the monkey, then the magnet, and close. Installation is that simple, and now you have a door that will stay shut. So forget drawers that won't stay closed. Every drawer stays closed. It's so fast and so easy. Even large sliding doors or cordless window blinds. Everything stays closed with Monkey Magnets. The secret is the ultra-strong industrial magnet that's powerful attraction keeps your doors and drawers securely shut. These magnets are so strong they can hold this hammer that's nearly 5 pounds. Plus they're super thin. They'll fit just about anywhere, and they stay out of sight. Even screw them in for a more permanent solution. Monkey Magnets are perfect for cabinets, dresser drawers, sliding closet doors, accordion doors, and more. They're made of ultra-durable metal, so even your outdoor problems are solved in an instant because they're corrosion and rust resistant. Use them anywhere outside the house, even on that stubborn mailbox that won't stay shut. Monkey Magnets can stick anywhere, from drywall to all types of wood frames, metal surfaces, and more. Call or go online now to get 8 sets of Monkey Magnets for only $9.99. Monkey Magnets are guaranteed to last 10 years or your money back. But wait, due to rising costs and supply chain shortages, this may be your last chance to get Monkey Magnets at this low price. There is a strict limit of 1 full house pack per order while supplies last. So order now to keep all your doors and drawers shut tight with Monkey Magnets.
Call 1-800-519-4810. That's 1-800-519-4810. Call or visit getmonkeymagnets.com. So call 1-800-519-4810. Order now.
Let's spill some tea.
Let's Spill Some Tea is sponsored by Artillery Tea Company. ArtilleryTCO.com is the website. Use the promo code RAV for 10% off. Artillery Tea is all natural. It's whole leaf. The tea bags are chemical free, and each can be used twice. Artillery Tea Company is family and veteran owned and operated, and a portion of your purchase goes to help veteran and first responder charities. Again, the website is artillerytco.com. Use the promo code RAV, that's R-A-V, and score yourself 10% off. Let's get right into what's in the cup or under the desk today. We're talking about Monica Lewinsky. Lewinsky has some thoughts to share about her former undercover beau and how he should have handled the affair and subsequent scandal that rocked the White House.
The right way to handle a situation like that would have been to probably say it was, nobody's business and to resign. Or to find a way of staying in office that was not lying and not throwing a young person who was just starting out in the world under the bus.
Okay, Monica Lewinsky saying that she was thrown under the bus. She went on to say that, quote, maybe this is a reflection of my generation or my age, but I don't know where the right balance is because there was damage no matter what. It's amazing, after all these years, this story continued to catch the country's attention. Let's bring in Dr. Gina and David to talk a bit more about this one. What's done in the dark comes to light, and the decisions you make as an adult, because she was an adult at that time, you ultimately pay for. It happens to all of us, Dr. Gina. Maybe not quite in that context. I guess let me put it, not quite in that context for Monica Lewinsky, but I think you get the point. You make a decision, and then you ultimately pay for it. Don't say someone else throws you under the bus. Just my 2 cents, but go ahead, Dr. Gina.
Yeah, she was an adult. She was a very young adult, and the age difference can't be ignored here. Also, you can't particularly call this a sexual harassment situation since she wasn't employed there. But my goodness, we are dealing with power of very different levels. And so it's one of those things that our law doesn't really address because it's very, as my husband says all the time when my children come up with these crazy ideas like, all abortion should be outlawed. My husband says, write the law and tell me how it's constitutional. My kids now say, I appreciate this so much because sometimes there is no way to write the best ideas into law, David.
Yeah, that's a great point. And let me just see if I get this straight. I'm getting this straight. Monica Lewinsky wants Bill Clinton to do the right thing morally? Is that what she's saying? I mean, what? What planet is she living on? So she doesn't want him to lie? Okay, yeah, that's a funny one. Look, the whole thing's ridiculous. I don't even... other than that, I don't know if I have anything else other than the fact that he was going to save himself. Yeah. I mean, so she wasn't... Listen, all she was to him, other than what she was to him, was collateral damage. That's what she was. She was collateral damage. Look, she's just a speed bump on his way to doing whatever he wanted from a narcissistic standpoint. And so this idea that he should have looked back and done the right thing, come on. Yeah. I mean, sorry.
It was about power and pleasure.
I find it hard to believe, Dr. Gina, that she was that naive. Like, even then. And I realize, yes, she was a young adult. Well, but I doubt quite seriously that she thought, he's going to leave his wife. I just can't imagine.
I think she thought that.
I do, too. Maybe I'm just naive.
I absolutely. I see her as a victim here. I mean, I'm not excusing her behavior. I think young women need to learn to be responsible for themselves. They need to learn to make decisions that don't have bad consequences that then impact other lives, like abortion. I don't know why abortion keeps coming to my mind today. But no, you're right, Terrance. To some degree, she needs to be held accountable. But our society has so created a culture where young women believe they can act without consequences, that's what she did. And I believe that Bill Clinton, and men, they can lie in those situations and whatever. Again, there's no law to punish here.
Tell you what you want to hear.
Well, but Bill Clinton.
Two things. Folks say you ain't never lied. A man will tell you what you want to hear. ever witnessed in the West Wing. Someone who was there to watch it all unfold will join us with his response. And ahead, vacationing Vice President J.D. Vance and his family whisked away to an undisclosed location after pro-Ukraine protesters encroach on them. A report on what happened and their safety is ahead. Plus, a taboo subject, but one that's been discussed since Cain slew Abel. Do you have a favorite child? Before you say, no, of course not, I love all of my kids. Yeah, we'll tell you why that's probably not the case. That story and so much more as this second hour of American Sunrise starts right now.
Good morning, America.
Welcome to American Sunrise.
Whether it's culture,
we have breaking news to share with you.
Politics.
President Trump is joining us live now from Florida.
We've got you covered.
This is what it looks like to be a patriot.
We have to protect the American family.
The American dream is still alive.
I'm David Brody.
I'm Terrance.
And I'm Dr. Gina.
Welcome back, everybody, to the second hour of American Sunrise. I'm David Brody. We're coming to you from D.C. and West Palm. That's where Dr. G is, and also Denver, of course, where T. Bates is standing by as well. Good to see all three of you back in the triple box. Hey, let me just say something about Zelensky, because there's so much to say since Friday. The worst thing for Zelensky actually might have been when Lindsey Graham opened his mouth. Afterwards. Lindsey Graham, being the most pro-Ukraine senator that you can find, said that Zelensky was absolutely disrespectful and not even quite sure if he can actually remain president of Ukraine. And then we're hearing this morning, Gina, that Zelensky is responding to, remember, his friend, Lindsey Graham, the guy that is so tight with Zelensky.
Yeah.
Zelensky responding to Graham saying, hey, maybe you want to move over here and get some citizenship and then your voice will have some weight. Basically dissing Lindsey Graham. Look, this thing is off the freaking rails, Gina.
Yeah, and ironically, I saw Lindsey Graham on Friday night and had a little bit of a chance to talk to him about this. Very interesting. President, by the way, was here this weekend as well, and there was a lot going on. It was a sort of a different mood this weekend with the administration or whatever. They were very focused, very, very focused, and. So it's always interesting here on the weekends when we get to see everybody, doing what they do and sort of downloading their week and talking to them. But interesting to see Lindsey Graham in town, showing his face around here. He's, MAGA is so conflicted over this particular guy. It's just unreal, Terrance.
Yeah, and we're going to get to Brian Glenn, our White House chief White House correspondent. He, of course, was there. We'll talk to him here in just a minute. But first, guys, the prospect of peace between Russia and Ukraine remains on track, despite appearing to have been temporarily derailed following Friday's Oval Office meltdown between President Trump and his Ukrainian counterpart. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who also met with President Trump at the White House last week, says European leaders have agreed to work on a Ukraine peace plan that they'll eventually try to sell to the Trump administration. During a summit in London over the weekend, leaders from across the pond also agreeing to spend more on their own defense in order to show President Trump that they can protect themselves. It's a pseudo win for President Trump, who of course has been pushing Europe to take up the responsibility in funding for its own security and not to depend as much on the United States. President Trump and Vice President Vance continue facing cheers from some and protests from others following Friday's bombastic Oval Office showdown with President Volodymyr Zelensky. The fallout for Vice President Vance included a tense ski trip with his family this past weekend that included the second family having to be moved to an undisclosed location. Pro-Ukrainian protesters showed up at the Vermont resort where the Vance family was skiing, forcing additional last-minute security precautions. Hundreds of demonstrators held up signs in support of Ukraine while others waved Palestinian flags. A spokesperson for the resort says the protesters were peaceful and not disruptive. Secretary of Health and Human Services Robert F. Kennedy Jr. put putting parents on notice to get their kids vaccinated against measles. The move comes amid a measles outbreak in West Texas. Secretary Kennedy says while the decision to vaccinate is a personal one, he defends the efficacy of the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine, calling it crucial to avoid the potentially deadly disease. Taking to Fox News Digital, the new head of the Health and Human Services Department wrote an op-ed on the issue saying, in part, quote, the measles outbreak in Texas is a call to action for all of us to reaffirm our commitment to public health. Under my leadership, HHS is and will always be committed to radical transparency to regain the public's trust in its health agencies. Secretary Kennedy points out, of the 146 cases of measles in Texas, 79 affected unvaccinated people, 62 of the infected people's vaccination status is unknown, and 5 patients are in fact vaccinated. That's a quick check of your headlines. We'll have more headlines coming your way just a little bit, but now let's get you back over to Dr. Gina and David.
Okay, Terrance, appreciate it. Of course, the big headline we've been talking about all morning is what happened in that Oval Office on Friday. And we'll talk about that fight that was really one for the record books. It wasn't Muhammad Ali's Thrilla in Manila, but President Trump dressed down the incredibly ungrateful Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Have a look.
You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's back to you. Far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once this entire meeting? No, in this entire meeting, have you said thank you? You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war, you
He's
can...
not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country is in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No. You've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning. You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Wow. Rav senior White House correspondent Brian Glenn was in the Oval Office as that fight continued and got uglier by the minute. Brian, I tell you what, like I said, all that was missing is like Teresa overturning a table in the Real Housewives of New Jersey there. Listen, Brian, here's the thing. They might as well have put a side-by-side with that going on at the same time, Putin sitting back chugging some vodka with a smile on his face.
Good morning, everybody. That's actually one of the things I was thinking about while this was playing out in front of the American people. As what is Putin thinking when this discussion was going on? I was about, I guess, 3.5 feet to President Trump's left and watching it, a front row view, if you will, and you saw the tension just come to a head, and it really did start to kind of boil up whenever Vice President J.D. Vance stepped in. But boy, I talked to some veterans that have been covering events here at the White House, have been in that Oval Office, and all of them are very well respected. A lot of photographers, a lot of journalists. They say they have never seen something like that ever take place in the Oval Office. So it was historic.
All right, Brian, so you know me. I'm going to have to poke the bear here. Yes, it ratcheted up with J.D. Vance's question and him challenging Zelensky. But it kind of started with this one question from this intrepid reporter saying, Mr. Zelensky, show some respect. Why did you show up here without a suit? A pertinent question. You posed it. And I think that kind of set the tone in terms of the lack of respect shown.
Perhaps, but I'll go before that. I think the first 32 seconds when Zelensky stepped out of the motorcade, President Trump had made that comment about, look, he got all dressed up. That led into what I would think with the next question that I asked. Well, the first question I asked was about being a peacemaker, about he wants to be known as a peacemaker. He wants to be known as someone who has stopped wars. And then I followed up with Zelensky, because let's be honest, Terrance, I have been covering President Trump for how many years? I've heard this whole Zelensky argument come up. Why does this man continue to go see heads of nations, get hundreds of billions of dollars, be in the highest offices around the world, and absolutely wear that silly little green jumpsuit, which you're not currently in the war in that country. Why can't you show some respect and dress up and be in the highest level? By the way, I will say this. Sometimes you can judge a book by its cover. And by him not showing respect, and obviously the wardrobe reflected his attitude, which we later found out about 6.5 minutes after that question. That's when things got heated up. So it was a reflection of his genuine disrespect he has for this country. We have given, some could argue, close to $300 million in cash and military aid. You have got to be kidding me. And you were trying to make a peace deal, save your country, and that's the way he acted.
By the way, Brian, my question was in no way critical because it was a pertinent question. I think your question was right on spot, and it set the tone. I think it did set the tone for where the conversation ultimately went. Go ahead, Dr. Gina. Sorry,
we were
I just
all
wanted to be
thinking
clear.
it. Brian, I have like 50 questions for you, so this segment's going to be a little bit longer than our producers had planned.
Let's float some breaks here.
Brian, the Logan Act. This is an act that goes all the way back to 1799. It's a law that prohibits U.S. citizens from negotiating with foreign governments without authorization from our U.S. government. Rick Grinnell, former ambassador to Germany, now special presidential envoy for special missions to President Trump, shared this post on X this weekend, which caught the eye of many in Washington and those around the country, actually. Let's put it up. It says this, quote, Obama's team, including Anthony Blinken, Victoria Nuland, Susan Rice, Alexander Vindman, advised Zelensky to reject Trump's deal in violation of the Logan Act. Now, if this is true, this is indeed a major violation. What happens with that? And then I just have to tack on to the end of this another question. It's burning in me, and I'm afraid you won't get to come back to me, so I have to ask. I want to know what everyone else's reaction was in that room when that all happened, because you could see what we couldn't see behind the cameras, and I want to know about that. And I also want to hear about your weekend, because I know you had a huge weekend here in Palm Beach with the president. So please, I'm sorry, 50 questions, like I said.
Okay, let's start. I'll start with the first one. I think that is something we should absolutely look into. Maybe Pam Bondi, someone can put that on her desk and let her investigate it, because obviously there were some violations there. Question number 2, you could hear a pin drop in the Oval Office when it started to heat up. I mean, it was tense. I was looking around, Secretary of Defense, I was looking at him. I had J.D. Vance in front of me. I had Mike Walsh in front of me. I had Stephen Miller next to me. They were all focused on what was going on. You could see the disappointment in Secretary of State Marco Rubio, because in all intents and purposes, he thought that deal was pretty much done and signed. And, of course, it got off the rails during the thing. Now, he was pale. I will say this. The feedback that I have personally gotten from, I would consider America First people, the base, has been huge. But I've received thousands of death threats. I currently have a police unit at my house in Texas because they're saying that they're going to find me and harm me and things like that. So it has been a very serious issue. And so the world, it's just not a U.S. thing. It's a global issue right now, and it is dominating the news cycle. So, but it had to be asked because I know the American people were thinking it, so I asked it.
We got limited time here. We want to ask you about President Trump's agenda, Brian, today. But I do want to say one thing about that Zelensky meeting. One last thing. I'm also curious where you think it went off the rails, because there's a lot of people talking about J.D. Vance and Zelensky, and that's true. But when Trump got involved, it was this line that set Trump off. He said, quote, this is Zelensky saying, that everybody has problems, even you as in America, but you have nice ocean and don't feel it now, but you will feel it in the future. To me, that was like, listen, don't play around with America. Don't tell us. And I think that just got Trump riled up. So I'm curious to get that your take on that quickly, and President Trump's agenda today.
Yeah, 10 seconds. You're absolutely right. That's when President Trump jumped in and said, don't you tell me about what we should be fearful for, in lack of a better terms. He's got a press conference today, 1 p.m. local time, talk about some foreign investments. I'm hearing it's the largest single investment in U.S. For the U.S. economy from foreign companies. That takes place at 1 o'clock. So very busy week. And, of course, tomorrow night, the joint session there, President Trump on the House floor between House Democrats and House Republicans. It's kind of like the State of the Union, but not really, but we'll be there to carry it for you.
Busy day on a Monday, on a Tuesday, on a Wednesday, every day. Yes. Brian Glenn, thank you so much.
Be safe, brother.
Thank you.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, coming up, in the history of our great republic, has there ever been a scene like the one we just saw play out in the Oval Office that we were talking about between a U.S. president and world leaders? We're taking a deep dive into history. We'll discuss that later. Did mom love you more than the other kids in your family? And by the way, do you have a favorite child? I know it's a taboo subject, but one that does have some merit. We're going to talk about the details and the debate ahead on American Sunrise. Welcome back, everybody, to American Sunrise. I'm David Brody. Great to have you with us this morning. Time now to drain the swamp. And this morning, we're going to flesh out the IRS. We do it a lot, and they deserve it. The IRS, by the way, the largest collection agency in the world, and with April 15th fast approaching, it's more aggressive than ever. In 2025, enforcement is ramped up, and if you owe back taxes or have unfiled returns, waiting is not an option. The longer you do, the worse it gets. Ignoring your tax troubles is the worst thing you can do. April 15th marks another tax year that has passed you by. Getting ahead of this now is the smart move, but never contact the IRS alone. Please, for the love of God. Instead, let the experts at Tax Network USA handle it for you. Why exactly? Because not all tax resolution companies are the same. Tax Network USA has a preferred direct line to the IRS. That's key, meaning they know exactly which agents to deal with and which to avoid. With proven strategies to settle tax problems in your favor, whether you owe $10,000 or $10 million, Tax Network USA's attorneys and negotiators have already resolved over $1 billion in tax debt. Talk with one of their strategists today. It's free. Stop the threatening letters, stop looking over your shoulder, and protect yourself from property seizures and bank levies. Don't let the IRS control your future. So here's what you do. That number on the screen right there, 1-800-905-8000, or visit tnusa.com/RAV. April 15th, just around the corner, folks. Act now before the IRS acts first. Ooh, that's scary. There is one member from President Trump's cabinet that would have benefited from the service, actually, and let's show the headline. Pete Hegseth says outgoing Biden administration targeted him for IRS audit. That's right. Posting on X, quote, this is what Hegseth said. Of course, the outgoing Biden IRS rushed an audit of the incoming Secretary of Defense. Total sham. The party of norms and decency strikes again. We will never back down. And on his first day in office, President Trump did pause the hiring of new federal employees and those dealing with national security and public safety, actually not those specifically. As for the IRS, Trump's order will only lift for them when the administration determines it is in the nation's best interest to end the freeze. If what Defense Secretary Hegseth assumes is true, it really is a new low in the weaponization of the federal government. So what do you think? Let us know online. Get in Getter, get in Rumble, get in the chat, and let us know what you think. All right, up next, the argument we witnessed between President Trump and Zelensky is like something we've never seen before. Or have we? We're taking a deep dive into the presidential past to make sense of today's present. But first, a quick look at today in history. It was on this day in 1931, when I was just 11 years old, that the Star-Spangled Banner, written by Francis Scott Key during the War of 1812, was officially adopted as the national anthem of the United States by an act of Congress. There you go. American Sunrise, back in just a moment.
We're getting ready for the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange. It will ring in about 6 minutes. I can tell you that pre-market trading is looking pretty good at the moment. All of the indexes, the Dow Jones or the indices, I think we determined that last week. The Dow, the S&P 500, and the NASDAQ are all in the green. Again, we'll take you to the opening bell here in just a few minutes. But first, let's get you over to David Brody.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it, Terrance. The news today, still the fight and fallout of President Trump's smackdown Friday of Ukraine President Zelensky in the Oval Office. The world watches President Trump schooled Zelensky on the art of the deal and the consequences of not knowing how to close one. Take a look.
The problem is I've empowered you to be a tough guy. And I don't think you'd be a tough guy without the United States. And your people are very brave. But you're either going to make a deal or we're out. And if we're out, you'll fight it out. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but you'll fight it out. But you don't have the cards. But once we sign that deal, you're in a much better position. But you're not acting at all thankful. And that's not a nice thing. I'll be honest, that's not a nice thing.
Trump is right. He doesn't have the cards. The only card Zelensky has to play right now is hand in hat, or hat in hand. Hand in hat in hand, as in come back and beg for forgiveness. By the way, I don't think I've ever seen a fight in the Oval Office as contentious as the one we just saw. As a matter of fact, I say I don't think. I've never seen it. And of course, the whole world witnessed it as well. All right, let's bring in our guest now. Bill Federer, of course, historian, who's just an amazing host of the American Minute. Bill, I mean, you've got to give me your take on this, and also maybe historical perspective. Have you not only have you maybe not seen anything like this, or maybe you have, but what about historically? I mean, I just can't even imagine something like this getting out into public in our history as it relates to between world leaders and a president in the Oval Office on American soil like that, in that specific situation. Wow.
Well, you're exactly true, David. And obviously you have a career in journalism, so you've witnessed things in the past, and there's not been one like this before. You know, the situation, if America is invested in Ukraine for minerals and natural resources, then it'll automatically be a defense that we'd want to protect our interests, which would be then Ukraine's interest. But one of the things that I sort of look at is a history of press conferences. And although it wasn't a press conference, there was one shakeup with Andrew Jackson's term as president with the Petticoat Affair. So Peggy Eaton was the wife of the Secretary of War, and she was sort of flirtatious and didn't follow the decorum and the rules for the etiquette, so to speak. And so she was ostracized by the other cabinet wives, and it caused a split in Andrew Jackson's cabinet. But anyway, press conferences, Woodrow Wilson was the first one that had a press conference, but it was just reporters writing things down. FDR was lucky because all the press coverage was positive. He was even crippled, and nobody in the country knew it because the press wouldn't mention that he was not able to walk. And Truman, he had reporters change lines. So he would do the press conference and they would repeat the line to him and he'd go, no, reword that. And he would soften it up. Eisenhower had favorable press coverage until the government was caught calling the U-2 spy plane a weather balloon. No, weather plane. It's like, wait a second, that was a spy plane. Kennedy was the first one to have a televised press conference. We have to remember that television was one of the reasons Kennedy won. He had the first televised debate with Nixon, and Kennedy put on makeup and Nixon didn't, and he looked more attractive. But as far as press conferences maybe not going exactly the way as planned, well, you had Biden in a press conference. He called Kamala Harris Vice President Trump. And so they realized that. But we have to remember, Zelensky was an actor. 6 years ago, he there's YouTube videos of him being on stage playing a guitar with clad but nothing underwear, just for laughs. So he's an actor, and he read Trump's Art of the Deal. So he's trying to out-Trump Trump. I don't think it worked. Yeah. I think Trump has. But as far as never before have world leaders disagreed in a televised press conference the way that Zelensky had.
Well, Bill, a memo to Zelensky and anybody else that steps into the Oval Office or anywhere: don't ever try to out-Trump Trump. That will not go well for you. That'll go south quickly. Bill Federer, great to have you with us, as always. Really appreciate your time. Thank you, David. Thank you. All right, heading back to Terrance in Denver now for the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange. It's sponsored by our good friends at AMAC.
The Association of Mature American Citizens is the conservative voice for Americans 50 and older. AMAC is fighting for the values that you hold dear. Join today. Together, we can write the course of America.
We're less than a minute away from the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange. I can tell you that pre-market trading off to a pretty good start right now. The Dow is up, the S&P 500 is up, as is the NASDAQ. Again, that's pre-market trading. We'll find out if it stays that way here in just a couple of moments when the opening bell rings. Citibank is at the podium. The applause is underway, which means we are quite literally just a few seconds away from the opening bell. And then we'll see if there's any change at all in terms of how the markets in this week of trading is looking to start things off. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The opening bell is ringing, which means the markets are now officially open. And just like that, our entire board is in the green. The Dow, S&P 500, and NASDAQ all remaining in the green, all remaining positive. Gold, silver, and crude oil also up right now. Hopefully it stays that way, and it will be a strong day of trading, particularly for those of you who are investing this morning. Well, folks, you don't go out and buy a life jacket when the boat is already sinking, and you don't buy gold when the economy has already collapsed. Clearly, others are heeding this advice as gold hit all-time highs the first part of this year. It's not too late for you as well, though. The company that so many of you trust to help you diversify into physical gold is the Birch Gold Group. The company that so many of you buy your gold from is the Birch Gold Group. Birch Gold specializes in helping you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold, and you can do so for no money out of pocket. All you have to do is listen to this 5-star review. Knowledgeable, helpful, non-pressure. That's what you get with the Birch Gold Group, and that's why so many people are endorsing them for so long. Get your free information kit on gold by texting the word America to the number 989898. There's no obligation here, just useful information. Plus, with an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and countless 5-star reviews, you can get all the information you need from the folks over at the Birch Gold Group simply by texting the word America to the number 989898. Let the experts at the Birch Gold Group help you secure your future today with gold. Well, we're going to take a quick break, folks. When we come back, we're going to take the political pulse of America following the fallout from the Oval Office showdown between President Trump and President Zelensky. Did the Ukrainian president skip a beat? Find out. That's later. And something that few parents will admit, they actually do have a favorite child. Ask Junior to grab you another cup of coffee and think about it while we take a short break. We'll have that conversation when we come back.
back to American Sunrise. I'm Dr. G. We're so glad you are with us. We want you to join us in our conversation on both Getter and Rumble. It is time now to take the political pulse of America. The beat today is this: more reaction to Ukrainian President Zelensky's press conference meltdown in the Oval Office on Friday. It is the story that is being buzzed about around the world. Here at home, Indiana Senator Jim Banks put it all in perspective. The headline says, and it's a Breitbart exclusive, it says, Trump sent a message to the world the U.S. will not be taken advantage of. Banks went on to say, quote, Donald Trump is the people's president, and it was a powerful moment where he spoke for America, for Americans who are tired of being taken advantage of by the rest of the world, and for Zelensky not to come in humbly to thank America, to thank our true American president, Donald Trump. I just thought it was one of the most powerful moments in my lifetime. For more on the epic Zelensky-Trump face-off in the Oval Office, we turn now to Tony Kinnett. He's an investigative columnist for the Daily Signal. Tony, your reaction when you first watched all of this, there's all sorts of speculation on this. I've heard drugs. I've heard body language and facial language looked like perhaps Zelensky was amped up on something. There's no way to prove that. But you saw Vice President Vance on Friday in the Oval Office, and you saw Jim Banks' statement, and you saw the expression of Secretary of State, of course, Marco Rubio. All just epic, right? Historic. What say you? What do you make of all of this?
Well, just to get this out of the way, as the Daily Signal's Indiana-based columnist, I always love seeing Senator Jim Banks get up and make me proud to be a Hoosier, so that's fantastic. But what I've been most surprised to see out of all of this, first of all, I was on TV covering this live while the Oval Office conference was going on, and it was like watching a car crash in slow motion. Mm-hmm. I couldn't look away. It was cringy. It was like watching The Office. It was awful. And Zelensky started prodding at Vance and thought that would work. And Trump is protective of Vance because Trump really likes Vance, and Vance is the bulldog of the administration, who's more articulate than anyone. And by the way, may I say, Vance is also the best looking vice president we've ever had. But on a particularly different note,
there is a resemblance.
I'm just glad he finds that joke funny. As far as the international impact, though, what I've been most surprised to see is all of the pro-Zelensky, pro-Ukrainian supporters who walked out of that saying, Zelensky botched that. Yes. All you had to do was walk in and say, whatever you say, Mr. President, thank you for helping us. I'll sign the deal. Then I'll push for more. He tried, as you said quite clearly earlier, to out Trump. It went the opposite, and it was a very, very bad move on his part. And then it sounds like over the weekend that King Charles, of all people, and Keir Starmer, maybe behind a closed door, said, dude, you better back up and say you're still willing to sign the deal, which he did Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, I mean, it played so horribly on so many different levels. I mean, let's be honest, he can't stand Trump. He can't stand Zelensky. Zelensky can't stand J.D. Vance. He thinks they're Putin apologizers and sympathizers. That's what he thinks. And, you can think whatever you want, but you don't say it there in the Oval Office. And you say, I'd love to have a spirited conversation behind closed doors about this. That's ridiculous. Speaking of Putin, I want to turn your attention to this headline from the Moscow Times. It reads this: Kremlin says U.S. foreign policy shift aligns with its own vision. What's going on here exactly? I mean, can we just do the disclaimer that Putin's a really, 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 really bad guy? Can we please at least do this disclaimer? Because we hear so much about Zelensky, and it's a problem. Zelensky's got tons of problems. But Putin is a bad dude, and I'm trying to figure out, I guess Trump, as a matter of fact, let me just read you this. Trump said this morning. He said, we should spend less time worrying about Putin and more time worrying about migrant, rape gangs, drug lords, murderers, and he goes on and on. So what's the take here on Putin and Trump? And I get this idea of him coming to the table. You got to kind of schmooze Putin. I got that. That's low-hanging fruit. But what do you make about the long-term ramifications of all of this?
So first of all, it's important to know that the Moscow Times, like every other piece of Russian media, is an arm of the Kremlin. And Putin, as the ex-KGB agent from Dresden, is not to be trusted. Again, people don't realize that what Trump says in public is in fact a negotiation tactic on the world stage. He doesn't actually like Kim Jong-un, the fat little dictator over in North Korea. Like, come on, folks. And this is, again, we've seen the same negotiation tactic by Trump play out how many times now? It's the same cycle. Trump praises someone while he's saying something outlandish and hyperbolic. The media then flips their lid, and then Trump ends up getting what he wants because he uses the same negotiation tactic. As far as Moscow, what they're clearly trying to do here with headlines like that is they're trying to take the United States and isolate it from the rest of the world. Because what they don't like seeing is Trump actually providing a good amount of leadership to Europe. When Vance walked up in front of Munich and said, listen here, you little free speech quibblers who won't let people speak without arresting them for memes, you guys better get it together or the gravy train stops. And Europe is already starting to address some of those systemic issues. They're starting to spend more on their militaries. They're starting to spend more on NATO. We're starting to see a great change come about because the United States is once again sitting at the seat of the free world, which means that Russia and China are screwed because communism and whatever Putin's little fascism light status over in Russia's got going on, those can't survive when America's true God-given republic is on the march. And so they're trying very hard in Moscow to separate America from the world. And the only way to do that is to say, oh, they're aligning with our vision. No.
President Trump set to address a joint session of Congress tomorrow. Tony, do you believe he's going to use the podium as an opportunity to light a fire under House and Senate Republicans specific to the budget? Right now, it appears that both sides are going to probably push for another continuing resolution because they're running short on time and getting that budget passed. We're, less than 2 weeks away? How do you think all of this is ultimately going to play out with the budget?
I have gone from really feeling uncomfortable during a lot of Trump's speeches to enjoying them because I get what he's doing. And again, I'm just saying that as someone who's following him from nil to yes. I believe he will get in front of Congress tomorrow and he'll go, we're going to pass the budget, aren't we? And then he's going to name 3 or 4 senators, and then he's going to name 3 or 4 representatives. You're going to work with your state to make sure they get what they want, right? Of course. Like, he's going to assume that it's done because that's his style. And then everyone's going to clap. And then the senators and Republicans, fearing the ire of Doge, focusing on that one senator or Republican representative, like we saw during the budget forwarding process before Trump took office. That heat is not something they want. And so I do believe Trump is going to use that as a bully pulpit. Trump only uses the pulpit as a bully pulpit, though. And so whether he's talking about Zelensky or congressional individuals in the budget, he's absolutely going to use that stage where everyone's watching to ensure that those representatives and senators know they're on notice if they don't comply.
All right. President Trump just posted this about tomorrow night. Tomorrow night will be big. I will tell it like it is.
And I mean, come on. I mean,
is that like a 84 font? By the way, what is that?
Yeah, man, it's like all caps Helvetica. It's like Microsoft Word on a billboard. I love it.
Totally is.
Go ahead, Tony. Go ahead.
Oh, I mean, come on. At this point, we ought to start putting out tip jars. I would laugh at the predictability of a clearly working strategy, but I can't laugh at something that works so effortlessly. I'm shocked that those who are opposing Trump don't realize this is the clear strategy that he uses. And I would say prepare some kind of a defense in opposition to it. But how do you propose an opposition to a mandate that is still so clearly effective with Americans? The dude had establishment Republicans and corporatist Democrats supporting some of his moves on Zelensky and Ukraine over the weekend. That's never happened, ever. These are people that hated Reagan, and they're allying with some of the statements made by Trump.
So are you saying the best thing he can do, the best thing Democrats can do, is just sort of go along with Trump and get some ideas maybe of their own?
We are having a reporter on from Politico on the show this evening to talk about the very thing. There's a moderate Democrat proposal that they are finally putting out because, I guess the DNC's Just Dance and saying didn't work.
Yeah,
maybe just be authentic for once. Tell us what's in your real heart and mind rather than just going along with DNC talking points. Tony Kinnett.
They want to win elections, though. Thanks, guys.
Well, yeah.
It'll happen no time soon.
Tony Kinnett, thank you so much for being with us.
Guys.
Always a joy.
Thanks, Tony.
All right, up next, a very taboo question. Do you have a favorite child? Kids, cover your ears. Or do you think your parents loved your brother or sister more than you? Or were you their favorite? Well, if so, you might just be onto something, according to new data. The truth hurts. We're going to tell you, though. This is coming up next as America's Sunrise continues.
Let's spill some tea.
Let's Spill Some Tea is sponsored by Artillery Tea Company. ArtilleryTeaCo.com is the website. Use the promo code America's Tea for 25% off of your first order. Artillery Tea is all natural. It's whole leaf. The tea bags are chemical free and each can be used twice. Artillery Tea Company is family and veteran owned and operated, and a portion of your purchase goes to help veteran and first responder charities. ArtilleryTeaCo.com is the website. Again, use the promo code America's Tea, and you can get yourself 25% off of your first order. All right, let's get right into what's in the cup today. Well, parents, this is just for you. Anyone that has children or a brother or sister, you definitely want to listen up. Check out this headline. It reads, "You probably have a favorite child. A new study reveals who and why." Oh yeah, I'm sure I got your attention now. Brigham Young University researchers examined why and if parents treat their children differently, and if so, which kids get preferential treatment, and more importantly, why. The study was published by the American Psychological Association, and it asserts that gender, birth order, even a child's personality and temperament can answer the age-old question of whether mom or dad like you or your brother and sister more. For this one, I'm going to actually yield my time here to the gentlewoman from Florida by way of Missouri and California. Dr. Gina, you brought this story to our attention. We're all smiling because we're ready to talk. So I yield my time to you, madame.
Oh, gosh.
Okay, I didn't know if that was to be nice or not, so I was going to comment with Tony Kinnett's joke that your wife called and said you were her absolute favorite child, but I won't say that, Terrance, because I think you're actually being deferential, but I thought that was really funny that Tony said that. This is fascinating to me because my children, I have 5 of them, for those of you who don't know, they're always accusing me of someone else being my favorite, and I just want to say once and for all to end it that the child that is watching this program right now, you are, Mommy knows who it is, and you are my absolute favorite child. But I come from a long line of favorite children, Terrance. I was definitely the favorite. And my mother and my father were definitely their parents' favorites. How do I know this? Because we were all 3 only children. So that's about all I have to say about that. You know, the reality is, the real, I think this study is gibberish as part of someone who has dissected things that the American Psychological Association, APA, has done for years, and as someone with 2 master's degrees and a PhD in related fields, I can say that I really just don't buy this. As a mom, I sincerely, they are each my favorite for different reasons at different times. And I really mean that. Like, I have one that is just so protective of me, and I love that about him. I have one that just takes care of our family like no one else, and I love that about her. I have one, Sammy, we adopted him, he has Down syndrome, and everyone in the family would say he's their favorite because he makes us laugh and makes us appreciate the simple things in life. So I could go on all day, but they're all my favorites for different reasons, David.
It's a great answer. It's a truthful answer. I've got 3 children, 33, 31, and 22. And let me just say, I said, please, whatever you do, do not watch the show today. I told them all 3, don't watch the show today. They said, Dad, don't worry, we don't watch the show. No, they didn't say that. It's just a joke. All right, look. Here, there's a lot to say, but I'll just say this, something to pick up on what Gina said. Give me the time and the day, and, you know, some days they're my favorite, and the next day they're not, if you know what I'm saying. You know, and I think that really is true. I mean, that's the honest answer. I don't have a favorite. Of course I don't have a favorite. And, Gina, what you said, each person, each one of my children has different characteristics that I love about them. I think when you start to literally favor a child and say, okay, apples to apples, the same punishment, or excuse me, the same crime doesn't yield the same punishment. That's different. But that hasn't happened here. So look, that's my answer. I don't know what else to say. I have a lot more to say. But
Step out on a limb, you two. Step out on a limb. All right,
wait. Hang on. Let me just say one last thing. One last thing. Isn't it interesting that the parents always say, we don't have a favorite child, but the kids always say, you've got a favorite child? Isn't that always interesting?
It's interesting.
Absolutely.
All right, go ahead.
So I'm going to say this. I do agree with you guys fundamentally. You probably don't have a favorite child. And I will say for me, I don't have a favorite child, but I do favor characteristics in each child. There are characteristics that each of my girls have that I favor, and there are some characteristics, some personality traits that I really dislike in my girls. For instance, my youngest, I love her courage. She is willing to delve into anything. She's got courage. She has a mindset that I'm going to be great at whatever I do, which is something that I appreciate. I'd like to think that I'm that way, so maybe that's part of the reason I truly like that mindset in her. I love her courage. My older daughter is much more cautious. She is a rule follower, which irks me at times. I am proud of it because it's actually probably a healthy thing, but I'm a rebel by nature. And so it's, I guess, really more about me. Oh, wow. Dr. Gina, I'm just realizing
I was just going to say, Terrance, I think the characteristics that we dislike are actually more like us. Terrance, I see you as a rule follower. I truly do, in all the good ways. So it's really interesting that that's what gets to you. And I have to tell you guys, a lot of you know my son, Bo, is pretty public. He's the one that's the most like me. He's definitely the one I lock horns with the most, but he's also the one who I just revere. I still can't believe he came from me. Amazing. You know, and I do think it is about the traits, like you said. It's about the day. This study is interesting, though, because it said girls tend to be favored, and that the meeker child and the younger child tends to be favored. I think that's because we get tired. Like, right by the time you're parenting your 5th child, your 3rd child, or whatever, I'm just not as strict with my younger ones as I was with my older ones. I also am a little more comfortable in my own skin as a parent. So I think that's part of the reason why. I'm like, you know what? No, this is my rule, and and you're not going to go that way. But I don't have to set a bunch of arbitrary rules that I'm not particularly sure about, like I did sometimes with my first poor little guinea pig, my Lida, that probably in a lot of ways got the worst of me because I really didn't have the self-assuredness.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. And you're learning. You're learning with the first kid. Like, there's no manual. You're learning with the first kid.
Yeah.
I will just end this. I probably would be a different parent if I had boys. And I know this about me. I would be a completely different parent if I had boys. In fact, my friends were like, dude, your voice even changes when you talk to your girls. They're like, when I'm on the phone, they're like, oh, yeah, you're talking to girls. Your voice even changes. So, yeah, I would probably be different. We want to know what you think about all of this. Let us know on Getter and on Rumble. Looking forward to your thoughts there. Let your voice be heard. I'm going to check in momentarily and see what you have to say. Still to come here on American Sunrise, we all need a good laugh before we start our day. Well, get ready for one because we've got it for you in about 2 minutes.
Welcome back to American Sunrise. Lots of chatter on that favorite child debate.
I bet.
Yeah. We're all in trouble. And anyway, so much fun with you guys today. It is time now for our sunny side up in the Panda Day. Having some fun at liberals' expense, the best kind of fun. Check out this commercial parody cooked up by our own director, Colin. Check it out.
Are you butthurt about a recent election? Are you depressed that Joy Reid and Don Lemon are no longer on the air? Do you get uncontrollably angry when you see Elon Musk slashing more government waste? Are you sad that men can no longer have periods? If so, Liberol might be the solution for you. One daily dose of Liberol can turn that liberal frown upside down. Just one red pill can make your day so much better. You'll be laughing at online memes. You'll dress a little better than the loser you once were. You'll thank a veteran at the coffee shop. You'll go sailing on the Gulf of America. You'll think more closely about the food you put in your body. You might even break up with the mainstream media and start watching some honest news. Liberol. It will dry those liberal tears and replace them with based cheers. Liberol may cause breakups with socialist friends, unfollows from celebrities, and a newfound purpose in life. Consult your doctor, as long as they're not bought off by Big Pharma.
Such a great one. Such a great one.
Clap, Colin.
Very nice.
You know, that was a great behind-the-scenes look at our green room And that was all filmed right here. In fact, the box of Liberal, I can see it sitting out there on the counter in the main area there. Such a creative, and that, of course, being our own Bo Davidson from here on Rav. Lots of fun. David, you know, I've got an urge to say Liberal /.Rav for 10% off.
That's right. That's right. I want 10% off. And by the way, Colin, you have any of that for my extended family? I'd love to get them some Liberal. But anyhow, I love them. Bless their heart. Bless their heart.
Bless their little hearts.
Hey, just really quickly, back to our parent story that, like, parents have a favorite. I've learned over the past 13 years that my parents like their grandchildren better than they like their own son.
Yes. We are out of time, T. But yes, thank you so much to everyone. What a fun show. Every single morning, 8 a.m., 7 a.m. for Jake Novak. War Room coming up next. Hug your children, love your God. Go boldly now. Live the truth.